Dana. Okay, I'm going to call this Star City Council special meeting to order. It's 6:30 on Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. I'd like you all to please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. States to the republic to stand one nation under God, indivisible. Okay, in this meeting, I'm sorry, roll call.
Nielsen.
Present.
Salmonson.
Here.
Chadwick.
Here.
Wheelock.
Here.
And Hershey.
Here. Okay, we're all present and accounted for. This meeting tonight is on our Unified Development Code Amendment discussions. I'm going to change it around a little bit though, Sean. I'm going to talk about the SurveyMonkey results here for a minute, just so everybody understands. And then we're going to have Sean doing the Unified Development Code review, stuff that we're working on changes. And then Ryan's going to do Ryan Field is going to do the municipal code review that has some police and fire, building, electrical, and different items like that on there. So we had the SurveyMonkey was out for about 15 days for people to comment. And we got 103 different comments on here, which is fantastic, which is really good, right? I think ACHD could wish they could get comments like that. Are we good? Okay. There's a majority of the comments in that municipal code, believe it or not, are about chickens. It's a common theme on there. We did have some comments that were almost in a form style from an email that was sent out. We had some people complain to the city, why are they not giving them enough time? I just want to make sure everybody understands we did give you 15 days to do that. And that email was from a different entity that sent that out. There's questions about different items with code of ethics, public hearing signs, some online maps and whatnot on there that we'll talk about some of those tonight. It is my anticipation that this won't be done tonight. After talking to staff, that we're going to have another meeting, and probably this won't come in until the second meeting in January for adoption, is what we're thinking. Okay, not anything that we're going to have on there. But the SurveyMonkey, I appreciate people going out there and providing comments and input. Actually, we did take comments all the way through Sunday on there. It didn't shut down on Friday like it originally was, but we got some comments on there on Sunday. It shows on here, so which is good. So with that said, I'm going to turn over the time to Sean to start out with some of the UDC code things that we're looking at on here.
All right. Sure, everybody did their homework.
I could tell you staff's been doing homework. They've been like working on it like crazy over the the last couple of weeks and even up until this meeting, right? Based on some of the comments that we're seeing.
Every time you tweak one thing, then you got to go somewhere else in the code and tweak another. So. Okay.
Perfect. And
So,
I think Sean and Ryan both have PowerPoints that'll be up there.
Yeah.
That they're gonna reference on this stuff too.
Yep. So, getting started, just want to kind of a disclaimer. This is not a complete code overhaul. Staff has been collecting changes since the last round of the code changes back in July of 2022. Recommended changes that you'll have before you include issues brought forward over the last 16 months of review and applications, working with the public, comments from the mayor and council, and miscellaneous housekeeping items throughout the code, including punctuation and minor administration changes, and then consistency throughout the.
And I just want to make one more comment. I think that we as a city have been very proactive in making adjustments as necessary as we find them, right? I believe that we've done more code updates than any other city in this valley. Fourth
fourth in 5 years that I've been here.
5 years.
Yeah, most cities,
So,
most
as
cities
we-
go 10 years plus
Right.
before they change. their codes.
But as we find things and you guys see stuff and the public makes comments on different things, we're trying to make our city the best that we can by making adjustments as we go.
I look at it as a working document because, every piece of property is a little different, a little unique. You can't, expect to have one code to cover every scenario. And we also learn from our mistakes along the way. Okay, so we'll just kind of go through, the highlights that I have. You want them to stop me? I guess you can stop when you have questions.
Yeah, if you have questions,
Let's
as
just
he's
work
going
through
through it, please ask him as you go. Okay. And if anybody's in here and has additional comments that they want to make, I think Ryan put some index cards over here on this table. Take those and fill it out so we can have those comments as we go through.
If the public
You guys-
hears something that want to write it down, and then you can get it back to me at a later date, and we'll bring it to the next workshop and
Yep.
make sure that that's looked at. Okay, so starting off, sorry I don't have page numbers, but chapter 1, and this is something that actually came up in the survey, was concerns about our public notice signs. And so the mayor and I talked about that, and we agree that it's kind of hard when you drive by at a fast rate to see all that information. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the public hearing notice, obviously the city of Star, then the date and the time are increased in size. And then we can still fit all the other stuff on the sign, but that we at least give someone the idea that, hey, there's a public hearing coming up, and they can pull over and read the sign, or they can call the city and or get online and look at the agenda, and they'll know what's going on.
And we're going from 2 inches to 6 inches on all that stuff.
That should be.
That's pretty good size.
Moving on under our zoning certificates, we are going to start adding a zoning certificate review. I'm on page, sorry.
Trying to get to keep this up with, there it is.
There we go.
I'll keep this up with that.
Okay, thank you.
Something to do. No, it's the very next page.
We're on page 5 of your packet. Of the correct packet.
So so Kevin needs a municipal.
I put it over with Ryan, and then they moved. Sorry, Kev. I put it over in front of you over there, thinking you were sitting over there, and then they moved you, so. It's okay, we're on page 5. All right. Okay. So what we're gonna start requiring all residential building permits to go through a zoning certificate review with our staff. This will allow us to better to make sure that the any conditions that are in the development agreements, such as that there's times when you guys put a 1-story requirement on houses up against additional existing subdivisions, additional specific setbacks, either unique ones or ones that are are conditioned in the development agreement or the application. We'll make sure we can catch those. And then later on, you're going to see where we're going to try to initiate some design, create some design standards for residential. And so that'll also be a review that we can do during that zoning certificate
Will this zoning,
process.
Here, pull the microphone closer to you.
will this zoning certificate end up being another fee, or is it just something?
It'll
we're
be
gonna
a
do internally?
small fee during the building permit process. But it'll be $50 to $100. It'll just be part of the review process, because it'll take our staff probably half an hour to review building permit.
And this is the only way that we can find right now to make certain that all those things are being caught when we're putting these single level stuff on there.
Yeah.
Just an extra layer.
It's an extra
of-
review.
Extra
Yeah.
layer of protection for everybody
Yeah.
involved.
So when does this step happen?
It'll happen during the
Overall.
building permit of
Okay.
the single family dwelling or the residential.
So when they file a permit to build a house,
Yep.
that's the time that they're going to review it before they get the permit back to start building the house.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then you have a meeting with them to go over any special.
No,
things.
it's just an administrative review. Our staff will
Yeah,
look
right,
at it. We'll look at the
administrative.
conditions that are in the development agreements or the preliminary plats, and we'll make sure that that house is meeting those setbacks, the design standards, any special requirements that we may have.
And does that get put into the zoning
No,
or into this document then, the zoning certificate?
The zoning
That
certificate is just
information?
it's just a checklist. It's like a permit.
oh, you're looking for the actual like
Well-
form?
Well, what,
It's just saying that, all this is saying is residential commercial building permits may be subject to review under the zoning certificate process, and associated fees shall be assessed for this review.
We'll
So-
so
establish
it's just a
that.
discussion that you're having with no,
No, they're not discussing anything. They just, when they submit it, it's going to these guys for instead of just Eddie and the plan review guys, it's going to Ryan and Sean as an extra step to make certain that all of the setbacks are that the special setbacks that we put on some stuff or single level or whatnot is actually happening on those building plans,
So like
on the
the,
site plans.
like the subdivision that's on Beacon Light and Pollard, that single street that we made only single story and like 4 lots, this would catch that.
It would assure that. it's
I
getting
think,
caught.
is that correct?
Because the Eddies, we don't have the system's not there for us to have Eddie or the building officials be able to pull it up and say, this is what has to happen.
Yeah, they're too.
This is a
busy-
step that
they're
we
too
have to
busy
take.
doing their thing, and so we just need an extra
right, okay.
set of eyes, and so that's what we're going to be doing on that. Yep. Yeah.
Add it to the list.
To the list, really. Making more, I am making more work for me and my staff. Yes. Next, we have under administrative design review. So currently the mayor, myself, a liaison from the council, which at this point is Jennifer and Ryan the engineer, and sometimes Tim. We get together and we sit down and we review the commercial applications, whether it's like the Starbucks or the new
Liquor store.
or whatever.
Yeah.
So
just
we sit down, we sit down, we review the elevations, the site plans, making sure that all the code requirements are there. A lot of times we will give some input to the architect on certain things that might need to be addressed in their design. That's part of our design code.
Architecture overlay.
Architecture overlay, yeah.
The commercial.
So what I'm proposing to do is, because we are very astute at at what we do, but I'm thinking maybe we might want to have a member of the professional world, as I called it out there, like a architect or a civil engineer or something to sit in with us to provide some additional professional comments
Sean,
while we're doing that review.
so this is prior, this is part of the application, pre-hearing,
This is usually after our hearings, after our conditional use permit, then we meet one more time. Because a lot of times you don't get all the details that you might want to get, or you might condition specific things within the conditional use permit.
Okay, I think the confusing part here for me is prior to issuing approval of the application.
Yeah, I'm referring to the design review application. So,
So just change the wording.
and also I think Evan next we wanted to better define the committee. So
So
it's the
this is-
design review committee is what we would be.
Yeah. So, Mr. Kevin, this is, I mean, any of the ones that are principally permitted uses would you never see anyway. But this ensures that the committee is looking at those as well, that they're following our guidelines on that without starting to build.
Got it. Thanks.
And this wording that I have here is just says the committee may also include members. So we can address that a later date. And if we decide as a committee, we want to bring in an extra person or two, we have the ability to do that through the code.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, we also,
Can I make one more recommendation?
yes,
I know it's picky, but instead of professional world,
I needed a word.
professional community.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yes, we'd rather have the community than the world.
Yeah, there are times,
We all live in the same
there,
world.
there's time I'm like, okay, fine. So you guys jump in anytime you see something.
Right. Well,
The professional
there-
world.
I was just in New Jersey.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
And I would add, like, just being on that committee and part of this process, like, it's been really, I think we've improved, some of the things that maybe we wouldn't have asked for in the past, for like lighting improvements, maybe some landscape or like just visual,
Facades of the building.
I think
Exactly,
we all
yeah,
can
it's
think of
been
one- I
really
think we all
good.
can think of one example that's out there right now that we could have done a better
Better,
job if we would have had a committee.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So this has been a really good addition.
And again, if you get a professional from the professional community, that
Oh, even
they're going to know
better.
landscaping, they're going to know more about architecture than we ever could
Yep.
dream of. So I think it'd be nice to have some input.
Is this somebody we're hiring or somebody?
This would just be a
we
volunteer.
Volunteer.
Yeah.
Just chair.
Someone from the
I'd
community
ask.
out there that, has that desire to look at some plans
And we meet twice a month. We have it scheduled to meet twice a month for this stuff, so,
or as needed.
or as needed, yeah.
Moving on to Article C in Chapter 1, under surety agreements. We've trying to clean this up because we always seem to have problems as the development world build the community. Kevin, I'm just going to keep throwing that one at you. I love it. I was looking for a word and I couldn't find it. They're busy. They're trying to get developments in the ground. They're trying to get pavement. They're trying to get all this stuff. We have specific requirements that need to be met prior to certain phases. For example, we require certain steps before a final plat can be signed. Once a final plat is signed, then they can get that recorded. That creates the lots within the subdivision, and they get addresses and parcel numbers, and they can pull building permits. But there's a lot of steps that have to be provided for that pavement, street lights, sign off from fire, hydrants, and sign off from the city engineer and things like that. So we beefed these up a little bit. So one of the things and I know this is something that the mayor's been harping on for a while. So for landscaping, including irrigation pumps and other landscape related materials, the applicant shall provide the city with copies of paid receipts indicating purchase and order of said equipment and materials, along with a scheduled date for delivery of installation. So what happens is we get late in the year, September, October, and developers are wanting to get their plats signed and get things moving on, but they're not able to get those final plannings in because of the season, or in the case of the last couple of years, materials have been hard to come by, whether it's pipe, whether it's plant equipment, things like that. So we do let them bond for certain things, but we've been finding that they've been kind of pushing them out, 6, 8 months, 10 months. Now all of a sudden it's June. They still don't have it in, and they have no excuse for not, getting the materials, or winter's no longer a problem. And so this just tightens it up a little bit, puts a maximum time that they can bond for that.
Yeah, 6 months. It would frustrate me when I go out drive. I will go drive in the morning, and I've asked it, why are they not doing this yet? But we'd had no teeth or nothing that really required them to do it at a period of time. That was a kind way of saying that, right? Yeah. That's the kind way.
Does this just give them a time frame, or does this have teeth? Because to me, most of the stuff we talk about
Both.
has a guideline, but no teeth behind it.
Well,
that
this
is
gives us
enforceable.
both, because if they don't get it done in this time frame, we can go execute their bond.
Have we ever done that? Have
Not
we ever
yet,
threatened to
but
do
this
that?
will allow us to, because we never had a time frame before.
I'm just checking.
But if you keep looking,
In any scenario, have
We've-
we
we
ever
made some-
called upon?
We've made some threats on some, pretty substantial, pulled them in there, made some threats, and really forced their hand a little bit. but we didn't really have a time frame that really truly forced their hand.
If you look in the rest of the red lines, it says building permits may be delayed by the building department or city signatures on future final plat phases may be withheld if improvements are not completed in the time frame. So by codifying it, it gives us more teeth to actually put something over their heads. Ryan, and anyone else, feel free to jump in at any time to explain this further.
So I just want to clarify here. We're leaving in the by weather or other relevant conditions. Because we oftentimes bond for landscaping stuff in August, September. Are we going to continue to do that, or are we not going to sign final plats now until landscaping is in if we're in the summertime?
Well, we shouldn't be bonding in the summertime at all, in my opinion. They should be doing the work.
Well, but there will be times and
So let's talk this.
Materials are going to be,
I get that, but let's talk about this for a minute. If I'm a project manager for a project and I know that lead times are crazy on getting stuff, I would be ordering that way ahead of time to make sure I have it in time to get it done. We shouldn't be bonding in the summer for this stuff because of their inability to project manage their own project.
this is why we're requiring
That's my opinion.
receipts to know that they're actually
Well, okay, all right.
ordering the materials. I mean, it shouldn't take them 6 months to get
No,
So
most of that
I'll
material.
give you an example that we just had. We had a subdivision that planned ahead, ordered all of their trees, paid for them at the nursery. Well, the nursery does not going to take care of stock that's already paid for. So all those trees are sitting over on the side of the nursery, not getting watered, not getting taken care of. The development goes to plant their trees. All the trees are dead. They can't plant their trees. So I think the bond allows them at least to get the final plat signed, get it recorded. They can start selling lots with the teeth in here that we can withhold building permits. And I think that's our teeth right there, is that we can withhold the building permits if we run into issues. So again, usually we would bond our previous code. And I don't see it in here, Sean. Our previous code allowed them a 12-month time frame in order to complete the work. And so we've shrunk that now to 6 months to complete the work, which really, if you think about it, in a 6-month period, they should be able to complete that work. If we bond right now in November, we're talking May, right, to be able to complete the work. That's plenty of time to be able to do that. And then again, by withholding the ability to withhold building permits, I think we've never had anybody other than the one the mayor talked about that we had to really coerce and threaten to execute the bond. We've never had anybody. Nobody wants to have their bond executed. It ruins their rating. It increases it's not good for them, Paul. So I don't think anybody's going to challenge us on getting their bond executed.
and the guys that do cash bonds, they want their cash back,
Right.
right? I mean, and there are a few of those that do $500,000 cash bonds. And that's crazy to me, that they're doing that, but we have the cash in hand. If they don't get it done, then we can just go get it done with that money.
Do we need to add anything like an extension? So say they could have another 2 months, extension if needed.
I say no until we see it happen and that they require it. Anytime you give them outs, they're gonna take the outs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So until we see it's a problem, we could always come back and make that adjustment later. If there's truly a material issue challenge that's causing these to go out further than 6 months, we can make adjustments from there, in my opinion.
Okay.
But it's up to you guys if that's what you want to do. But
I thought we had the ability
There is the ability for
for a one-time 30-day.
one-time administrative exception or extension. Yes. And anything
Administrative
beyond that, they would have to come.
to the council.
Yeah.
Again, we're trying to be accommodating, but we also need to have some teeth because someone will take advantage of it. We've been pretty lucky, but there are examples out there. Let's go over it.
Okay.
I'll make a note.
Are you talking about the lights too on this? Are you gonna come down to
Where's that at? That's,
that? B?
yeah. So, and then in B, streetlights must be installed prior to the first building permit being issued for the development and shall be energized prior to occupancy of the first structure. The administrator may approve the use of a temporary streetlight prior to building permit issuance, provided permanent streetlights are installed and energized prior to occupancy of first structure on a case-by-case basis.
And that's come into play, and that's become an issue because of the streetlights that we're requiring now. Some of those have had some seriously long delay times, and so they've had to go in and put some temporary lights in to light up the streets until those.
See some that don't comply with dark sky.
What's that?
Is that why we currently see some in new subs that aren't in compliance with dark sky?
Because they're temporary lights.
No.
Well, that
Mr.
the
Mayor, I
ones.
apologize. We don't have any temporary lights in place right now.
Oh no, we had some at
It's
Stonecrest.
talking about like we have subdivisions right now that aren't in compliance that were previous to any of our current code.
Oh, yeah.
So the globes
Yeah,
of
nothing
death,
new.
is that what you're
Yeah,
talking about?
nothing new, Kevin.
Mostly on
Strip
Munger.
on Munger.
Well, I can't remember which one it is right now, but it's 3 weeks ago, I drove through a recently completed sub and the streetlights are not in compliance. And I'm almost positive that it was approved after.
We'll find out which one it is.
Yeah,
We'll
if
take a
you
look
could-
at it
if you
because
could
we're not
tell
aware.
us.
of people that are like that.
Uh-uh.
We have all of our.
But I will tell you,
all our approvals right
the
now.
temporary street light thing do not comply because the ones that we had to use down at Stonecrest, man, they lit up the world.
Mhm.
I mean, they were like these big globes,
Right.
but it was temporary until they could get the street lights in at that point. So.
Sorry, one question on that streetlight thing. So if it
Turn your mic on.
regarding the streetlights, so if it takes, a year for that first house to be completed and that occupancy permit, issued, so is this saying that the street could, that light doesn't have to be turned on until that occupancy permit is issued? Or,
No, we stay on them. They, as soon as they can energize them, they'll energize them. Correct.
because it's.
And again, remember, they have a bond. They have the bond in place.
That's not what the code says. I think Councilwoman,
I
you're
mean,
right.
Well,
it's-
are you reading the red line?
No, the B part, or
Right,
the
the red line
black, it
part?
says shall be energized prior to occupancy for the first structure.
Correct. So a streetlight must be installed and energized. The actual streetlight that we have specified in the approval of the development. They can use temporary streetlights during the construction process, but we will not issue a C of O until the actual streetlight is installed and it's energized. So that's-
Living in the houses until.
Correct.
Right,
Everything is
so
complete.
if there's no house there though, for say a year, is that area not lit?
No.
No,
No.
because again, they've bonded for us to sign the final plat and get it recorded. They've bonded for 6 months. So within 6 months, they're gonna have to get those installed and energized.
Correct.
This is just to kind of get them.
I'm missing it.
I
With
don't-
or-
Sean,
Sense.
With or without a
Supports
house, after 6 months, they're gonna have to have a street light or we can put it in and take it out of the bond if I'm not mistaken.
Where's the 6 months in this code?
After
The bond's executed.
the bond's
After they
executed.
After they give us a bond, we have 6 months. We just talked about that. That bonding is for streetlights, landscaping, fencing. I mean, they can do different bonds on that.
Okay, so
Correct.
this is just for the bond process.
That's correct.
So if they're not bonding and it's going through the normal development during the construction phase, they're installing a light and it's lit up before a house is built. Is that correct?
If they're not bonding for it, it would have the lights in the place before the houses are built. That's what she's asking.
The code is that the lights have to be energized prior to occupancy, the first occupancy certificate of occupancy being issued.
Okay.
Initially, prior to this change, initially we brought this before on the last code update. We wanted to have it prior to construction, but because of all of and this is something we worked with our emergency services, they like to have it lit, right? Regardless, because as soon as materials are delivered on site, we now invite theft. However, because when we opened that up and brought in the development community, because of all of the delays with all of the materials, We ended up updating that code to say, rather than having them energized prior to construction, the code was updated to read like it does today. Streetlights must be installed prior to the first building permit being issued for the development and shall be energized prior to occupancy of the first structure. That was changed at the last update.
If you want the 6 months to apply to this, then this has to be rewritten because the 6 months is in item A regarding landscaping.
No, but if you look at item, like in C, it talks about all the different, such as landscaping, pressurized irrigation, streetlights, fencing, and other site amenities.
Well, item C seems, I mean, it's talking about a surety agreement, right? That they can bond for it. But item B goes beyond bonding. Now we're talking about issuancy of structure, permits and things like that. So they don't seem to relate. I think that we've got some
So let's,
continuity issues in these
then let's just
paragraphs.
take this section, have Chris, and by the way, Chris had a family emergency. That's why he couldn't come tonight.
Got it.
But let's just ask Chris to just review that based on what Kevin's saying.
And
the legal
Councilwoman
standpoint.
Salmonson, I'm just backing.
Right. I mean, it's easy enough. It's not going to get approved tonight, so we can ask the question
Right.
based on what you said. So you got that, right, Ryan? Yep.
Hey, Sean, at one point in time, we talked about requiring temporary lighting prior to issuance of any building permits if the permanent
It's
lighting.
in here.
Is it in there?
The administrator may approve the use of temporary streetlights prior to building permit issuance, provided permanent streetlights
Okay.
are installed and energized prior to the occupancy of the first structure on a case-by-case basis.
And I think that may help answer Jennifer's question is, no, it's not going to be dark because they've got the temporary lighting there when any building permits are issued.
But to answer their question in totality, we just need to have Chris review it from a
Right.
legal standpoint and see if it covers what we're trying to say.
I think the biggest challenge here is B is setting an order of operations. And the use of temporary lights doesn't change that order. It just says you can swap that out, on a temporary basis. The order is prior to the first building permit being issued and prior to occupancy of the first structure. To me, that's outside of bonding, that's outside of temporary lights, that's setting an order of operations. And so if we want those things to agree and tick and tie, we got to reword that section.
We will bring that one back.
We'll bring it back. I mean, it all's going to come back. Chris is going to review it all
Yeah,
anyway.
we'll get it figured out.
Okay?
Okay. I am going to go through the entire code and change. And Highway District number 4 to Highway District number 4 reference. because
Oh, yeah.
Change their name.
It's not Canyon Highway District 4 anymore. It's Highway District 4. They got rid of the Canyon portion of it, just so you're aware.
They move?
Huh?
Did they move?
No, same location. They just got rid of the Canyon reference. I'm not sure why, but whatever.
Makes them sound cooler.
And so number 6, also regarding or part of the bonding section, I guess. An applicant may bond for ACHD, Highway District 4, ITD roadway improvements in order to obtain final plat signature. Building permits shall not be issued until all roadway improvements are completed and signed off by the agency. One building permit for the original parcel may be issued if approved by the administrator, provided that 84A6 is complied with. So again, the developers, it takes a long time to get the final plats through the process and recorded. Once Jacob signs as a city clerk, it could take 2 to 3 months for them to get that through the county for review and final signature, and then recording documents. So this allows them to bond for, an ACHD lets them bond for public roads. I don't think Highway District 4 does though,
They don't bond
currently.
currently, but you need to cover it in case they allow it to be bonded.
And,
So,
oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, this bond actually prior to Mac and Ryan signing it, this is so that the highway district has to sign it before we do. So they bonding them, they would sign it, then it would come to us to sign by them bonding without it being paid. Otherwise, our previous code says we would not sign unless it's paved.
So this bond is actually not even coming to us. It's going to the highway districts
what if it's a private road?
I think we can, when we get down to there, we can discuss that because what do we currently do on private roads? Do we?
We've never had somebody come to us until just recently. So we have talked about being able to bond for private roads. And that bond would be through the city.
So should we add something in this section then for private roads?
I think it needs to be on the, yeah, I guess we could
Yeah.
reference it here and then also in the,
One section.
And this is, I'm going to bring this back to the landscaping. If we're allowing for bonding of paving, I've never seen a development. I won't say never. You rarely see a development that puts their landscaping in prior to paving. So if we're allowing for bonding of paving, then we're going to allow for bonding of landscaping in the summer. And again, it's probably more internal.
No, because there should not be, again, this is my thing. The only time you're bonding for paving is when the temperature is not up above 40 and rising. Like,
Well,
you
that's-
should never be bond, and we should never allow it. That's
Right.
on them to get it done in the time frame. Basically, you're just giving them all sorts of outs.
Which is why we've never allowed for bonding and paving prior.
Right.
So it just goes back to kind of a change and an education. We're gonna have developers that are gonna push back on us and we just need to stand firm.
So
staff.
could we just add a statement that says, we're not going to allow for private road bonds?
Well, it's not just private road, though. I don't
mean-
think that matters for that. I mean, it's from what he's saying, what they're bonding in the summer for paving, for what purpose? I mean, what's the purpose for the bond? Because you should,
To expedite stuff. It's the only reason.
well, right, it's expediting stuff. No, get it done. To me, we need to treat the bonds for true situations where weather does not allow you to get it done. Or the time of the year does not allow you to get it done. I have a problem with just bonding, just a bond, just to help them out, to get something signed. It just doesn't make sense to me. And when I think about it, honestly. But it's up to you guys to decide that.
Limiting bonding makes staff's jobs easier. I mean, I won't argue that fact. I'm not one that's fond of all the bonds that we get. So it's just,
we have no say over the public roads, but we do have a say over the private. So if you wanted
So
to.
if you want to say that, you
It just seems, for me, like I just don't have enough information about how, like what the process is to make like a good, like decision for all parties involved. And so it seems like that decision, asking us to make this decision, fine, but
We're not asking you to make the decision. We're
well,
asking you
if
to.
we should be
approve the
including
code.
like,
We-
well, yeah, well, but
It's
if-
administrative. It would never come to you for review and approval.
but it seems like the mayor's saying that we could just take out the bonding for roads.
No, I'm saying we should not be bonding. My whole point is you don't bond unless you have to absolutely bond because you can't truly do it. That was the purpose of, in my opinion, that's the purpose of the bond.
So
And we should
today
define-
they're looking for bonds or they want to bond because they want to start building. And our code doesn't allow them to start building until the roads are in.
Until the,
So they're trying to short circuit. I mean, it'd be great if you didn't have to lay out the cash to build the roads. You could just start building and selling houses.
Well, right now.
but they're still laying
That's
out
not a
cash
good
with the
idea.
bond, depending on what kind of bond they're
Well,
doing.
right now,
Well,
let's say someone comes
little
in,
bit.
let's say someone comes in right now and they can't pay before it starts freezing.
Right. So that's an
They bond- they
extenuating
bond for- they bond-
circumstance.
That's kind of what the intent is.
That's the intent.
Right.
But today developers are trying to get around that. That's what I hear you saying.
Yes, the reason for that is because you have these transportation agencies that are taking 3 or 4 months to get anything done
Yeah.
anymore, right? And so we're the ones that are trying to accommodate everybody because of the failures at the transportation agency and the failures at the development agency. Are we really the mediator that's supposed to do that?
And we're not seeing a whole lot of bonding because again, they have to pay for the bonds and the bonds are only good for a certain amount of time. So I don't see, it's not being abused now. It's just to try to accommodate when you have weather come up or you have materials come up where you can't get that. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to, I mean, I don't think, I think rarely do we ever see anyone abusing it. It's really trying to, and it's because of all the other, if all the other agencies were like us and could get things out lickety split, there'd be no problem. But ACHD is 4 or 5 months behind on certain reviews. Who else? Canyon Highway District. I mean, they're
Human
over
Hydra
a
is
year,
horrible.
you know, and so we're just trying,
Highway District.
so we're trying to make it to where we can help them through the process, but there's only certain things we can do.
And we're doing all of this today. All we're doing is adding some clarification to our surety process today.
Yeah.
We're doing all of this today. We're working with the builders. They're able to bond for landscaping, pressurized irrigation, streetlights, and perimeter fencing on the sites. They're doing all that today. We're just trying to add some additional language in here that gives us a little bit more teeth around the bonding, because it's been one of the mayor's growing pains throughout his last 4 years is this, how many bonds come in. Nobody's abusing it. They're just trying to utilize it. We've recently had people request to bond with ACHD. We've never had to deal with it. So I think we're just trying to put something in here so that when it does, because more people are asking for it. We had 3 people ask for it last winter, and through the process and everything, it never happened because by the time everybody was able to come to the table and agree on something, it got warm enough and they could pave. So we've never had it, but we'd like to have something in here that guides our actions around it.
I have a question. And maybe this is irrelevant, but maybe this is the new guy still. If we have a bond and they don't perform what they need to do, is the bond valuable enough for the city to carry it out and finish
It's 150%.
what needs to be done?
Yeah, it's 150% bond of what the cost would be, and they have to provide the receipts and stuff, or
Oh, I have
estimates.
the original bond on file.
No, but they have to provide the estimates too
Correct.
of what it was gonna cost them to get it done.
So there is enough funds to finish what it is. It's not
It
just
should be.
I hope we can finish it
No.
for this.
Which
Increase
is
that,
another reason.
Because prior, what was it, 120?
So it's better
120,
off for them
correct.
to just perform the
125.
first time so they don't have to use the bond money
Right.
at 150% of their
And,
cost.
and we don't want to extend these out more than 6 months to a year because yes, the cost could go up and we could get stuck with that price. Although I don't think we've ever actually cashed in the bond. At least we haven't since I've been here.
So I think we have one thing that we need to address in paragraph D, second sentence. Yes, well, the first sentence says 150% of the cost of completing the improvements. The second sentence excludes labor by saying the estimated cost for all items. So I think we need to be specific there so that we're not differentiating.
Yeah, I would add that.
All items of labor.
Good
Yep.
catch.
That's a good catch.
I had some
No
questions
one's
on,
ever questioned that before.
Yeah.
But that's a good catch.
And
Yeah.
and we currently include labor.
We
today.
do include it, but if it's in there, then it's no question.
well, even with that, I can't understand the addition. It says the city engineer may require increased costs, require increased costs on what? And or additional bids. I mean, if you're already asking for all items, what else are you asking for?
So
That
I'll give
makes-
you an example, Councilman Hershey. We recently had a development that came through and the bid on the asphalt we felt was extremely low. So Ryan questioned it. We asked for another estimate. The estimate came back, was again something we felt was extremely low. Having been heavily involved in the Highway 44 project, we had a pretty good understanding of how much it was costing to lay asphalt. When we inquired further, it was, oh, well, this contractor's given me a buddy favor, so this is all he's going to charge me. And we're like, no, that's not going to work because we're not going to get the buddy favor if we have to execute the bond. And so that was one example. Another example is we found another one that was submitted to us. Their landscaping ended up being like the bulk of their bond, but it didn't include the road and the fence and everything. So there are times when that comes in and we may have to require them to give us some additional bids, or we may ask them to increase it, or Ryan will just say, here, I went out, I found that this is how much it is per linear foot to lay a fence. So here's what I've added to the bond. Here's your bond
There is quite a bit of scrutiny that we.
Yep.
amount.
90% of these that we're bonding for, that we have bonded for in the past, and probably even higher than that, are based off actual bids from legitimate contractors that we have dealt with or have seen work in this area. Very seldom are we doing it off an engineer's opinion of cost. And those are the ones that, both those examples that, Ryan Field had talked about were based off opinion of probable costs that, and I've been on that side of it. As engineers, we don't always know what those current costs are, and our opinions can be based on, and in this day and age, if you're 2 years old, you're outdated. So, when we see actual costs, I usually try and check quantities. I try and make sure the number of trees, the number of square footage and all that. So I'm going through every one of these that is approved. I write an actual letter of recommendation to accept the bond that I issue to Ryan Field, Sean, and the developer. So there's a paper trail of all of this stuff.
And they actually go out and inspect the improvements before they'll
Release it.
release the bond.
Correct.
It's just the wording. I wasn't questioning the process,
No, I understand.
which I'm not questioning the process when I say this, because that was a long time to get to my point. My point is you should say we are rejecting unbalanced bids. That's really what you're doing. And what you're doing is exactly that, the buddy, the hookup, hey, I'll do it for $1 a yard. And you know what? It's more.
You said.
I think, did you see those ones?
Unbalanced bids. That's
Reject.
Bids.
what we call it in the federal government, which I realize we make up our own world. But
So I think you change that.
Add that.
Well, you change that, you get this increased cost. You say the city may reject unbalanced
you don't have to
bids.
call it that. You can say,
Something.
all costs need realism. All costs need verification.
Yeah, but I mean, either way, and additional bids are to be required as necessary.
Yeah, but not required increased costs. That's on them.
Well, no, you get rid of the increased cost.
Just say the city may require additional bids as deemed necessary. That's enough. I just didn't understand the increased cost.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
I can give you a helicopter example.
The good thing is this protects us from the 5% that of the bad ones that are out there. 95% of our developers have no issues and no problems.
And it takes care,
5%.
takes care of the question you said, Councilman Wheelock, we're asking. It takes care of that problem.
Yeah, but if you basically say this stinks.
Huh?
Yeah, if you think it stinks, it does.
All right, moving on. Under accessory structures, we didn't really have a clear definition of the setbacks for an accessory structure in someone's rear yard. So, I mean, we do when it's a building over 200 square feet that requires a building permit. But say someone wants to put a Stormore shed or something in their backyard, we're going to require that there be at least a minimum of 5 feet from any property line in the rear yards. Otherwise, they could put it right up against the fence. So it would affect our neighbors. It could affect fire. You get a bunch of structures back there, and they can't get back there to operate. So I think it's good to have some.
Can I push on that a little bit?
Yeah.
How does putting it right up to my property line affect my neighbor? It's my property line.
Well, if it's, I mean, that's
I guess some of
So-
it though is when you look at the plats, don't they, do they do a 5-foot easement on?
usually a 5-foot easement.
For utility stuff anyway? And so you're making sure that it stays outside of that 5-foot easement, right?
So a
Wow.
utility is different than a property line.
No, I understand that. I'm talking through this a little bit on why we're setting that 5-foot thing. It's on the back fence on a lot of these plats, you see a 5-foot utility easement or something that's already running along there. You shouldn't be building on that easement anyway.
So Councilman Nielsen, if you build your shed right on your property line, your eaves more than likely will probably hang over. If they don't hang over, they're going to go right to your property line, which means that you're going to be unable to follow the law and maintain your stormwater on your lot. So by having a 5-foot buffer, you now are allowed to retain the stormwater on your lot. That's the biggest, most common issue we see with that, with people not having that buffer. is the stormwater then goes on to the neighbor, floods out the flower bed, and that's one of the biggest reasons.
I can see that. And yet I think that the eave would be the furthest extent of the building would have to be within the property line, right? We could say that
Mhm.
rather than 5 feet.
Good. We also, in working with the emergency services, that's where we got 5 feet from, was for them, so that there's room for them to maneuver through that. Victor wants 10 on everything. We've tried to have a common medium of 5. That's another thing, is to give them room to maneuver. Or that's why we
can
came up with
call-
it. You can
The fence and the shed.
approve it. Yeah, right. Just
Well,
it.
Look, the problem that I have with code like this is you buy property, you can use that property, except that you really can't use all of the property because you've got now these setbacks and things like that. And look, if I can build a structure and place it 3 feet away, that seems reasonable. I'm not in favor of putting it right up to the line because that could be contested, right? So a little bit of distance there. If there's truly, if you got to maneuver around a shed and these sheds that are under 200 square feet, I'm pretty sure that you can get a hose or direct the water pretty easily around that. So I don't know about the maneuverability. I really would love to hear your input on that. But my instinct is to fight for your right to your property, and you're taking 5 feet away from it all the way around. So
7.5, it's over 200 feet. Oh, think look at it that way.
Just for my clarification, this is inclusive of your little 8x10 shed that you might
Right.
buy.
or a playhouse.
It's a man shed.
I'm thinking of the kids.
This would go towards any
Yeah.
dollhouse or
Yeah, I think the little sheds.
I built my shed 10 foot off the property line.
You could build a compound and we wouldn't know it.
You got a lot of property too.
I mean, it's up to you guys. This is why it's in red, underlined. So you guys.
I'd be in favor of language that prohibits, any part of the structure from crossing a property line and
Draining
that,
onto it or
or draining onto, and that respects easements. But it's if you don't require a building permit, you're not likely to find out where an easement is.
We talked about you wanting Victor's input, and Victor hasn't said anything. Should we let Victor answer
I would
that
love it.
question?
Yep.
I don't know if Sean wants me to talk about setbacks because every time I open that up, we end up at 40 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reality is, on this one is, you're right. We can't control what people do with their property sometimes. I just happen to have a really big district that has, 3 cities in it, and one of the cities does have a law, a rule like this, and part of it is enforcing that. People just put up their sheds, and we find that they're doing it, and so it is really hard sometimes. Being able to maneuver through that. If you think about it right now, we're 7.5 feet setback currently on the sides. Out of that 7, you get 3 for utilities, right? So you get your HVAC, stuff like that. So we're back at a 5. And then in top of that, you put your shed in. And if the back of the house is on fire, there could be some tight spots. But again, it comes back to how do you enforce it? That's the biggest thing. Because you'll start seeing sheds pop up all the time.
Are we putting your people in danger with the scenario?
I wouldn't necessarily say my people in danger. Obviously, every scenario is a little bit different, but my biggest concern was being able to get a ladder in the back of the house to get whoever the occupants are from the second story. That would really be a scenario. But at the end of the day, this one's hard because how do you really enforce this one?
So it sounds like perhaps the issue isn't necessarily a setback, but it could be distance from utility, distance from primary structure, distance from things like that. But if you get somebody that's stuck a shed in the very back corner, there's no easement and they want to put it 2.5 feet off the property line in the back and the side, and it's 25 feet away from any utility or structure. I mean, that should be allowed.
Yeah, as far as the far back one, I necessarily don't have any problems with
Yeah.
the far one. It's really the sides that we tend to see more crunched in.
Yeah.
How do we say we want to maintain a 3-foot path around your house?
Or a 5-foot path around the house.
Whatever.
I'm in favor of
Because-
that sort of thing.
We go back to the Home Depot problem where you say we need to maintain X number of parking spots and then you put 14 sheds in 20 of them.
Well, the parking spots are there. They're just occupied.
Right. But the path's there, all there is stuff in the,
Yeah.
same
and-
problem.
Look, and they're going to pile up wheelbarrows and lawnmowers and all kinds of stuff there anyway, right?
Where you park your lawnmower is not our problem.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna be honest. I almost think this should just go away.
Well, for every one phone call we answer, someone asking, 10 of them. could be-
Well, the only problem I have is,
Where-
okay, the accessory structures less than 200 feet do not need a building permit, but require a certificate of zoning compliance and shall have a 5-foot minimum setback from any property line. So now we're not requiring them to do a building permit, but come in and get a CCZ. But they already have to go through their HOAs in order to build a shed anyway.
Let the HOAs.
Let the HOA
determine this.
manager
Yeah.
the property.
It's up to you guys.
HOAs.
Right? You guys
Well,
want-
I'm just saying, what are we doing with that? I mean, we're just creating more work on the inside to look at a location of a shed. That's under 200 that's under 200
We're making
feet.
Sure that public safety is covered. We're making sure that neighbors not getting flooded out. So, I mean, our job is to protect the public. That's what we're doing. We're not just making this stuff up to make it up.
But, okay,
So-
so question though. If we have this in place and the HOA has something else in place already, this is only gonna apply to new development. It's not gonna apply to anything we've already approved.
Yes, it would.
How? Because if their HOA documents already allow them to have a shed at a certain locations and stuff, and they gotta go through their own design review committee there, the HOA. They've already got a rule established prior to us creating this rule in those HOA documents.
I guess that's a question for Chris.
Look, I think
city-
it's probably good to have something in here that talks about that it does not extend beyond or cause runoff onto an adjacent property. But other than that, I'm no building permit, no review.
Okay. And that's, if that's what you guys.
Stay on your property
Yep.
and
You
over,
have to
and
do
over
this.
your
We
property.
get the phone calls from the neighbor when they're getting flooded out. We get the phone calls from the neighbor wondering why there's a shed right up against their fence. So we're the ones that have to deal with it. So
Yep.
we thought, well, let's put it, since there's an easement there,
That's
since there's an
easy one.
easement that they should be violating, let's go ahead and put a 5-foot setback. That's where this came from. I mean,
So it seems like the problem is really on the side of the house. It's not in the back. It's not the
Well, but
backyard.
based on what he's saying, it's all over. It doesn't matter.
Or all.
But he's saying it's on the side of the house.
Like.
The calls
so-
he's getting.
So it's almost like if it's a
yeah,
Say
I'm
it's
usually getting
a
it from the.
less than 10-foot wide
So this-
pathway, for like to access into the back of their yard. We don't want, we want to maintain at least 5-foot, pathway for people to get, for emergency to get through if
I mean,
needed.
they can fill it up with stuff, but we probably
Right.
shouldn't allow a structure to be built. Is that what you're talking about?
Right,
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think maintaining 5 feet away from utilities and, and primary structure or 7,
Well,
Let's
and-
noodle that. one.
Yeah.
I would say,
HOA.
I'd like, yeah, if you guys don't mind, we have to bring a lot of stuff back if Sean and I, could work.
Yeah.
And let's figure it out.
you've heard our thoughts.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I just want to be clear that most of these 8x10 sheds, per what the easements read, the majority of the easements, they're allowed to be built in an easement because the easement says no permanent structure. If it's not on a foundation, it's not considered a permanent structure, and therefore it could be built inside most of these easements.
A lot of times they'll pour us. They'll-
Move them all the time.
Just giving him more work. Okay, we'll come back to that one. Okay, next one, build to rent. So
This is definitions.
This is the definition of it. It takes some of Kevin Nielsen's suggestions in this, the creation of this definition. So this is so for those of you that don't know what a build to rent community is, just think of our wonderful American Star. So we did run through this a year ago. It was a year ago. We workshopped this and they kind of got beaten up and everything. Still think we should discuss it and consider some sort of regulations for these type of communities. So if you look at the definition here, sometimes called horizontal apartments, community developed as a single family development with the specific intent to provide rental living rather than owner occupied living. Development is built in a manner that resembles a traditional neighborhood comprised of single family homes. Dwellings may be located on individually platted lots or on one parcel. In some cases, the dwellings may share a common wall. So
That's just a definition.
that's
so-
the definition. Later on, we have the whole ordinance that we need to review and go over, but that's just, and we can come back to that after we review that section to see if we want to tweak it, take it out, whatever we want to do with
I
it.
think that defines it clearly based on what's happening.
Okay, then definition of common drive, also referred to as a shared driveway. An access shared by adjacent property owners that is privately owned and maintained. Common or shared driveway shall not be permitted in new residential developments without approval from the council and fire district. So the reason we're not prohibiting these just straight out is there are some situations when you have maybe some larger lots, 2 5-acre lots. Also have commercial lots that have shared drives. So we don't want to eliminate them completely. I think our intent is, and once when you get further down, actually the next one, if you look over flag lots, we've also we are flat out going to prohibit flag lots in all subdivisions higher than R2 or R2 and higher. That's a-
So we need to
R-
write that way.
well, no,
Designation is R2 and higher.
no, higher than R2.
So say R3 and up.
No, I want R2 because those are half-acre lots and a half-acre lot. So the whole
But they're
intention is to allow for emergency turnaround. A half-acre lot could design a driveway with an emergency turnaround. So we don't want to exclude that, which is why I put the half-acre lot.
But should we just say this? They're not permitted within residential subdivisions with zoning designations of R3 or higher.
You're describing paint point in this,
Right.
right? Hammerhead lot with a long old flag.
I mean, higher than R2, just say it's R3.
It's a half-acre density.
Right.
Not necessarily. I mean, if they have a whole bunch of open space, I mean, that square footage of the lot can be reduced.
Which is why I put half-acre.
Yeah, to the,
Size. So it would truly be a half-acre R2 subdivision.
what if you just take out and just say, on any residential subdivision with lot sizes less than half an acre?
Do that.
Yeah, don't even put an R2 in there. Just say less than half an acre. That way it just. Because that's what we're saying, right? Anything smaller than a half acre are not allowed to have a flag lot. That's what you're referencing, right?
Your thoughts?
Yeah, what we're trying to accomplish here is that a true honest flag lot is this little lot in the middle of 5 houses. And when we get that little lot it's really tight because you have fencing, and that's where the common shared drive comes in, right? I do like your definition. I think that's a little bit more than just saying in this restricted R2 and so forth. But then again, like Sean permits up there are some cases where we could have one, but it's not going to happen unless we look at it and really challenge that developer to go back and go, hey, what does this look like, right? Can you put in knuckles and get rid of it? Can you think outside of the box to redevelop it, not just take the easy way out and say, oh, I'm going to put a flag here.
The problems we have are the 10,000 square foot
They're,
lots.
yeah, they're taking the easy way out and just going, oh, another lot, let's put a flag lot here. And so I think this will broaden it up, or this will tighten it up a little bit to decrease that.
So, but to go back what she's saying, I think, so flag lots are only permitted on half acre lot sizes or bigger. And then down here, all other flag lots may only be permitted upon approval from the fire district.
Right, so that would cover commercial,
That would cover everything else.
commercial lots, 2 acre.
Half acre residential lots are
Yes.
bigger. I say half acre residential lots are bigger.
Could we add something personally? I just, I think that there may be times that flag lots are appropriate and when, on those bigger lots. But I just don't see, like, as a owner, I don't know, like, maybe can we just say something like, like, we're not encouraging them, like they're not, flag lots are not recommended.
You don't want to give them the recommended out. They're going to do it, just like you see on some of these subdivisions that are happening. Because because we're giving them, we're saying all other flag lots may only be permitted upon approval of the fire district. That kind of gives them an opportunity to talk to the fire to see if anything else is allowed. But we're
Oh,
basically
gotcha.
making the statement
That's-
that what you're saying
that's
is a
hard.
half acre lot size or bigger is the only time it's allowed.
Yeah.
That's my thought. on
So
that.
strike the R2 then.
I would strike the
Yeah.
R2 just in itself and just say half acre. Because like she said, let's say it's an R2, but they cluster all these small 10,000 square foot lots and create a whole bunch of open space and just put a flag lot in there. We leave it. So just make it simple and just say half acre lots and bigger.
The definition of shopping center, I've added, or commercial, shopping or commercial center. And we've reduced it from 3 to 2 buildings. In chapter 3, we're striking the business and adding commercial to the district. So it'd be neighborhood commercial district, general commercial district. That's just in line with standard LUPA definitions of what commercial is. We'll still keep the central business district definition. Okay, under the uses within the zones, we've kind of beefed up a few things here, so I'll just go over them real quick. Convenience stores, we're going to require those to be conditional use permits in the C2 and LO zones. Right now, they're principally permitted. I just think that's the type of land use that definitely needs more eyes.
So can we do that in the
actually
CBD?
What's that?
Shouldn't we do that in the CBD as well?
Oh, sorry, I missed that one. Yes, it's supposed to be there. Sorry. Yeah.
But leave it as a P in a light industrial?
Yeah.
Okay.
Guess the sewer and water district wants to
Right.
have one. Then we've got the single family build to rent, which would be a conditional use permit in the residential zone and in the mixed use zone, and prohibited in all the other zones. We struck fireworks stands from this use matrix because they're temporary uses through administrative approvals. So we've just added that. You'll see that later on in the document. We struck institution because none of us know what that means.
I think we all need an institution for ourselves.
I've added a definition of mixed use development. Do we have that in here?
So.
Yes, further down in the definitions, I'll explain what a mixed use development is. Basically, I'm trying to differentiate between a live work development and a pure mixed use. So live work, in my opinion, is like what's over in Stonecrest, where you have 2-story unit You can have commercial downstairs, but you have access internally to that upstairs for a living space. Mixed use is if you have commercial downstairs and you have separate residential upstairs that's accessed externally through elevators or things like that. So we did not have a definition of mixed use in our code.
So on that one, so it's conditional in the mixed use zone. What's the reason, why not have it permitted? I mean, it's a mixed use development in a mixed use zone.
Because it's no different than, because mixed use is going to be, it's going to have a residential component in addition to a commercial component. So I think the council has always wanted to review residential developments. I mean, typically you don't even allow more than I think 30% maximum of just residential.
Well, we have
This
thing is 25.
or 25.
You can, in a mixed use development, you have 25% residential, 75% commercial or other.
This is different because this would allow, what we're trying to do is we're trying not to eat up all of our commercial land with residential. But if you can build residential on top of commercial, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting that commercial, you're also getting residential that will service that commercial.
Right. And so like it's similar to the live work, but it's a different owner.
It's again, the live work, the intention for the live work, and we've been struggling with this because we only have one live work development and we're kind of learning from that one. The intent is obviously not to convert the downstairs commercial into residential. But what happens when someone wants to use the upstairs for commercial? Then it's not really a live work anymore by definition. So,
this is the Wayback Machine, right? When that was first brought to the city for consideration, including in our code, really the idea that I had in mind was more of what you're talking about, the mixed use. That our CBD in particular, to create a vibrant downtown, we would have commercial on the bottom with tenant type residential up above. Right. The idea of the live work is great because you can take if you contrast that with neighborhood commercial, that makes a great neighborhood commercial out in front along a highway. Right. Where you can have some commercial as well as living, and then subdivision behind it.
I think it gives a mom and pop the ability that they might not be able to afford a house and a business, but they can combine it.
So the idea of a live work neighborhood where that would kind of extend back in, I don't think that was ever contemplated. And I'm not sure I would want to encourage that either.
Right, and I agree. And what we've been seeing is them as buffers. Like Stonecrest is a perfect example. You're going from highway commercial to live work to residential. I don't think we want to be tucking these in.
No, it should be along highways. There should be a little bit extra road or a frontage road that allows for some parking. I mean, the thought is really make it commercial, but then put people there too. So you've got a vibrant commercial environment.
You also have to figure, and again, what we've learned is parking. You've got a hair salon with three chairs. There's 6 parking spaces right there by the time you get 3 hairstylists and 3 clients. And so for Stonecrest, remember, they have the ability to use shared parking with the commercial up front, but you tuck that into a subdivision somewhere and
it was a cool experiment. I think it's worked out great.
It's worked out. This is I
think it's awesome.
Really nice. We want keep pointing.
And
they're all there actually.
They are. Yeah. It's a great model. I mean, communities all over the world are really built like this.
But I think we need those to stick to what the intent was, and that is live work, not
for the community, not the world.
Not have a commercial, not have someone with a commercial like a barbershop downstairs, but then they rent the upstairs out to someone completely different.
And I'm going to go back to just what she was saying, because she was talking about leaving it as permitted. I think it's important for the council to look at it.
Right.
And put conditions on it that are required for stuff like that.
Yes, please.
Yep.
And then under the River Center, I mean, it says that it's not permitted. So do we want to change that to conditional? I mean, it seems like that.
For which one?
For the River Center for mixed use.
See,
Well, the RC is a specific area that's defined in our South of the River.
South.
plan.
I think the River Center, those was strictly commercial.
Yeah,
Oh, it
Oh,
is.
it's just that
not
one
the
little strip.
entire South of the river.
Right, we have-
plan, It's
Yeah,
just
it's just,
the-
it's that portion south of the river,
right by the river.
east of
Oh, okay.
east of Star Road. It's that northern part there. We have plenty of opportunities within the South of the River plan for mixed use that would allow live work or would allow mixed use. Yep. Okay. Next page.
Sorry, I'm gonna go back to
All
that.
right.
So the riverfront center definition, I'll just to make sure that we don't want to allow it there. So to provide for a mixture of uses which may at the sole discretion of the council include office, small scale retail, restaurants, offices, entertainment, high density residential within the comprehensive plan area designated as riverfront center. Riverfront Center is planned to be a vibrant mixed-use center for the community that builds off river access and connection north of the main street. High-density housing is encouraged on the upper floors of buildings and at the fringes of the land use designation.
In the River Center? Okay, then yes, we would definitely want that then. Okay. Good call. Yep.
As a C,
As a C.
Yes,
Yep.
yeah.
no Ps.
Okay. Or
Sorry, so I noticed in here, we don't have a sheet here, but you, in your notes, in the packet, you had a red mark that said for the public utility, you had a note that said add quasi-public.
oh, I have that on there.
Um,
So a quasi-public would be any type of like an Idaho Power station or ACHD
I think you just
Yeah,
need to
I-
define it.
facility.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
we need to define it.
I don't have the definition. there yet.
Okay, so maybe next time.
Anything.
Because I was looking up definitions for that. I mean, city buildings are included, it can be included in that definition.
For the public side.
Yeah, so I think we might want to, identify what we mean for it in our code
Mhm.
so that, we have that
Yep.
correct things falling in the right categories where they're going.
And we may not want them in every zone either, but it was really to get us discussion going on it. I don't even have the I don't even have the definition.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But I will get you one. Okay. Okay, so in the zoning district dimensional standards, as you see, I have added a 45-foot height allowance in the CBD, the C2, the industrial, and the mixed use. So if you go to the next page and you look at note 5, it states 35-foot height requirement unless approved by council through a conditional use permit or planned unit development process. And all this does is this gives the ability, if we have in the downtown, if we have a business or a development that wants to exceed that 35-foot height, they're not coming in asking for a variance where you have to show hardship. It gives the council strict power to approve for up to 45 feet in height.
question, Victor, what's the maximum building height that can be supported by our ladder truck?
110.
107 feet.
We're not going 107 feet.
Why we want to go 105?
But yeah, don't. So that, yeah, so I think, I think what we've seen is, I think in the last few, we've seen them ask for a little bit more. And we've been able to accommodate that. I believe the 45, we'd be able to accommodate.
What's the highest structure currently in Star?
Is it Greylock?
Or Albertsons?
Currently being built,
Oh, that is
Currently
currently.
approved?
approved height. Street, Graylock.
What's Wright Brothers?
Well, Wright Brothers, Wright Brothers.
I think they might be 52. Are they that small? Yeah. 'Cause and you guys gave that
Look,
them.
I'm thinking about hotels, things like that are going to be more than 45 feet.
And a lot of it actually is not even, I mean, if you look at it, a lot of it is decorative, right?
Right.
And if you look at, you go to Wright Brothers and you get up top, you have to peek over.
Well, and it allows for putting utilities and stuff up on roof
Mechanical
structures.
inside the.
Yeah.
You know, and no, I don't want to necessarily go up to 105 feet just by default, but look, I am in favor of increasing the height. It attracts a different product than we have in our town now. It actually, I mean, look, 50% of the people are going to say one thing and then the rest will say the other, but we have limited land. We really value open space in our community, which means that we can accommodate more people moving to our community. And actually, the data says that we reduce traffic by building up versus building out. And so encouraging a different type of product, you're shaking your head. I
I'll
can
be
show you the
the 50
numbers.
I'll be the other 50%.
Well, but I mean, the data bears it out. So if we want to preserve open space and reduce traffic, we're going to build up. And there's got to be,
But
you know,
you
there's,
create more traffic building up too. I disagree with that because you're creating more localized traffic for people coming into that.
sure. And you're also improving walkability. When you talk about a CBD, that, I mean, some of the ideas that we have walkability and density, place it closer to shopping, place it closer to highways so that we're not, you know, loading up our collectors and arterials. You can go right to it. So what I'm suggesting is a balance, and 45 feet to me doesn't really attract the balance. So I'm thinking more like 60 or 65.
I completely disagree with higher than 45 feet in this corridor down here. Bigger along the Highway 16 maybe and Highway 2026 but downtown here, I don't think that going 60 feet is the right thing at all.
Remember, you have the ability to, this is up to.
No, I understand,
Conversation
but
to have though.
Huh?
It's a good conversation.
good
to have.
conversation to have. I think you totally change the identity of the city by creating a high building out here. Meridian doesn't have a ton of those high buildings, even in those,
I was just going to say, if you drive downtown Meridian, right around City Hall, they've got
they're 45 and 55 feet.
well, you look at that new structure that's got the commercial on the bottom. It's nice, tall commercial. So you've got, you know, really beautiful stores. And then you've got four levels of residential. You're right around 55 to 60 feet.
Or the
And
one
I just-
across the
beautiful.
street
It
that
looks
just called-
amazing.
I know, but I guess
It's
my thing is
amazing.
I don't want to be in Meridian.
It looks amazing.
The new one in Meridian that's being built is 8 stories.
The what?
The new one in Meridian that's being built is 8 stories.
That's
It's not
not
being
the one I'm
built, it's
talking-
stalled.
That's the one
That's the
just
one
an
right by
abandoned
you.
piece of concrete.
You know, if you're gonna do bigger stuff, high corner of Highway 16 and 2026, the areas like that, I see that, but you can get a lot done in 45 feet.
Reason I picked
can.
45 from the 35 is 35 is
Hi, Miss Teresa.
doable, but it's you're very limited and like Kevin I think was going towards. Your downstairs commercial, you don't want to have squatty little
No, but you get
ceilings.
10 feet.
You want open, you want
Right.
10 to 12 foot, but then you're having residential or even more office space upstairs. You're limiting.
You could have 10, 9, 9 and a
You're gonna
35
limit
foot
that,
window.
or you're limiting yourself to just a flat roof instead of some gabled roofs.
But you
because
can have
you're
10, 9, 9
35.
and you could have a 10, 9, 9 on the 3-story building with 35 feet and have all that stuff hidden. And our height thing is isn't it to the center, Ryan, of the roof line? It's not to the top.
It's not to the top yet.
So
It's to
you
the
have
length.
extra feet to cover that stuff anyway.
Yeah.
I worry about changing the whole dynamic of our city by allowing large buildings in the downtown corridor, which I don't think is what
I'm
we
not
want.
suggesting that.
No, I know. But
I'm suggesting a variety. If you limit everything to 35 feet and do 1099, you're just going to get a bunch of buildings. Everything matches up. Look, give the council a little more leeway here.
I think we did. I think the 45 feet is a leeway.
I'm asking a little more leeway than that.
Well,
would-
I
I
think
would
they
limit it
did
to
come back and
45
ask for a
feet.
variance or whatever for it.
Then
You're not
then
going
you
to have a
could do
hardship for a variance.
No.
Give us,
Or you do a waiver through a conditional use permit.
It's your guys' shit, but I'm gonna tell you, I don't think, because that creates, to me, it creates problems, because what happens, we have an outfit that bought all this property right across the street. Now we have a 60-foot allowance for them to build.
Not allowance. This is not an allowance.
No, I get it. I just, but we give them the opportunity to put 60 feet and the council comes in here and says, yeah, we'll give them 60 feet. And that changes the whole dynamic of Star, just like that, by having a 60-foot building right there.
What dynamic does that change?
Our home, small town, the hometown feel. We were trying to maintain that hometown feel. 60-foot buildings doesn't create that feeling. Doesn't create that rural thing, in my opinion, at all. I think that creates a Meridian feeling. We don't want to be Meridian.
So what if we were to say, because I picture something more of that height, like in the south of the river area. Long term, you know, you're looking 20, 30, 40 years down the line. When we, you know, and you have that mixed use development with the thriving community, the thriving businesses on the bottom, and then, you know, that walkable area and living, you know, upstairs. And it might be 3 floors of apartments upstairs.
But you can get that in 45 feet. I'm telling you, I've been in
So-
construction.
So just to add some perspective, if I may, the code was 35 feet and we made the exception for Wright Brothers. They're at 54. Greylock currently, the main structure is at 45. We gave them an exception for the dust silo at 52. They found it a different way to do that dust silo and it did not ever come to fruition. So they're right at 45.
So great. So Wright Brothers is the tallest then.
Wright Brothers is the tallest.
And look, I drive by Wright Brothers, and to me, it doesn't stick out as something that's just egregious. I mean, to me, it looks normal. Even in small towns, you go to downtown Emmett that was built over 100 years ago, you're looking at buildings that are
Yeah.
approaching 60 feet. Looks great.
In Emmett? Where?
No.
Where's a 60-foot building in Emmett?
Downtown on the corner.
No.
Which one?
No way it's 60.
There is no 60-foot build. No.
I know cranes and
I-
I know height.
We
but it's
grew up
no
there.
way
That's not
it's
60 feet. Are you talking the old town? You're
It's
talking the
taller
old
than
town?
anything we have here.
It's not 60 feet.
Granted, I haven't
45
measured it.
maybe, but 60.
Talking the
no way.
downtown
Mhm.
old building.
The old downtown, yeah.
Yeah, the brick buildings. Yeah, it might be 45, but it's not 60.
I think the other thing is, you know, obviously the taller the building, the more road width we need as we start to comply with that. So, you know, you think about, you know, somebody who wants to do something here in downtown, well, they may not be able to accommodate the road widths that are needed.
But in the south of the river plan, we
So
could.
we could, by planning, most
Look,
definitely do that.
Okay, I'm not saying I want a
What'd you
bunch
say-
of 60-foot
What'd you
buildings,
say Wright Brothers was?
but let's put some options out there and see how our community can develop and give the council the leeway to make some decisions that we may not be able to anticipate now.
Thank you.
You're looking.
So, David, do you have anything that you want to add? Like, I'd be interested to get your input because personally, like, I would be in favor
put a
of
helicopter?
increasing that for the south of the river. At least having that option. I mean, we don't necessarily, you know, it's not saying that we're going to approve it, but it may, you know, we'd look at it. It sounds like we are probably not interested in
I
that.
don't have much of an opinion on it, but I will tell you this, Mr. Mayor. The feel of a town is not the size of a building or how many people are in it.
It's the people.
It's the people
It's the
themselves and the
people.
attitude and how it's done.
That's
It's
fine.
not the size. I think we've learned that over the last 4 years. So a 60-foot building to me,
You know,
Yeah.
it's your guys' decision, but I am,
I'm still talking
I think we
about
ruined
this out. I don't like it in the central business district, but on the outskirts, come on.
It's new. it's
Obviously, where are we getting higher densities? And I'm gonna guess that way.
If-
Right? I get confused inside. That way, right? Down that way. The higher densities need higher buildings, and it is true. It's an up or out world. Up requires more infrastructure like buses and things like that. Which we don't have. It does. You're attracting.
Which we could have. I mean, we don't have it by choice.
No, yeah, right now, infrastructure is always last to catch up. It's just the truth. So I have no problem with it, but if you don't like it in the central, I wouldn't want it right here. It doesn't make sense right here, but where Wright Brothers is, I didn't even know that was 54 feet. I just thought it was an interesting building. I was like, what are they building? An elevator shaft? Then it finally came together. And it was like, it doesn't look bad at all. It doesn't even blink. I drive by it and that's fine. So it's where it is, not how high it is.
So what if we were to say,
No, I'm good. No, I'm good.
so 45 in the CBD and the ones that you, except for like River Center, maybe we,
I would tell you, I'm not a fan of it in the River Center. That's not the vision that I thought we were going for.
If,
No, that's
if,
lower there.
if we've proved that we can go over our own height restriction with the Wright brothers, and as they come and we look at it individually, we're willing to go over our own height. Why don't we deal with it as a case by case and leave it as a standard?
I think that's
Till
what
we-
this code does.
But we've already proved we're willing to go over it, right? We already have a building that's higher than this code.
Right.
So why would we change that and let them come individually? If they want higher than that, they can come to the council and get approved individually. And if you want to approve them all, each one, we could do it individually. Nobody's going to back off from doing a 60-foot building if they think they can get through with it
So-
and they want to build it.
Got that. But the purpose of this code as written, if you look at note 5 on the next page, 35 feet is still the height requirement.
Yeah, I saw
What the 45 or whatever number we put in there does is it gives the council the ability to approve up to that without having to use a variance, which a variance requires that there's some sort of extenuating
What was
circumstance.
Wright Brothers extenuating circumstance?
I don't recall.
That's what I'm saying. There's nothing that says that's an extenuating circumstance from
Yeah.
my point of view as I sit here.
I get that.
So let them come individually and tell us why they need what they're coming
Yeah,
for.
and that's what this does. But
45 feet or 50, 45,
well, then why put a number on it?
yeah.
agreed.
So
Why
no,
just
no,
leave it
fi-
at
Leave it at 35
no,
where it
note
is.
5, if we had language that more like note 5 and don't even put a number on there.
So I just wanted to add, I'm sorry, Victor and I were just looking at stuff in the fire code. The fire code classifies anything over 75 feet as a high rise. And then we get into a ton of additional requirements and restrictions. So I think regardless, we want to try to,
Below that.
yeah, yeah.
Looking to go 75.
You don't have,
We went from 35 to 54, so it's pretty easy to do.
you don't have the, if you're gonna go higher.
But you can
have to
say
park
no.
people.
You'd never be able to park.
Right, yeah, but that's an important part to know, right? Because the more check boxes we are, there's, a 75-foot building, that's a lot of fire extinguishers, Mayor.
Or, that's right, one every 75 feet.
Well,
I still have plenty of crane for that.
We are gonna need 3 sessions for this, not 2. Because we've gotten nowhere and
Oh, we got somewhere, we got somewhere. We're going.
still got this.
I do want to say, like,
When I
thank you.
studied-
Appreciate everybody, like, this is thoughtful discussion that I think that we need to have. So I don't, I don't want
It's a
to
workshop.
rush through it.
This is another word.
Yeah.
That's why I said we're gonna need 3.
Merry Christmas.
It will be. I'm not here.
So do we want to let that one?
So
Noodle on it.
leave it at 45 right now.
But,
Let's
you
let's
know-
noodle this a little bit.
Yeah.
Strike the 45s for now.
So this is me and Kevin have been arguing the same thing for 8 years now.
Hey, I wanted no height restrictions along Highway 16, but I lost that one. So this is,
Well, 74 and a half.
Already
feet.
broke the rules that we do have.
Sean, also, like, there's just a typo, IL, it should be LI.
All right.
On E, we'll come back to that one because if we modify that 5-foot setback for those accessory structures, we might need to change that one as well. All right. Article B, additional residential district standards. This is gonna be fun. Where'd my clear guy go?
I'm on it. Oh. I'm right there.
All right.
Just tell me. Smack me out.
So this is something I've added, and this is, you guys bring this up all the time. I'm wanting to have some sort of design standards and guidelines for residential dwellings, and so this is kind of my stab at it. No right or wrong answer. We can add to it. We can throw stuff at me. So single-family residential buildings, front and side elevation minimum standards. These standards shall be reviewed for compliance with all submitted residential building permits. Again, under that zoning certificate process that we're gonna start. Council may adopt these standards as part of a development agreement or preliminary plat approval. The following minimum standards shall be applied to all new residential structures in all residential zones. First one, a minimum of 3 architectural elements shall be provided for all single-family residential structures. If you look at my diagram there, those 3 elements would be, one would be like the rock, the brick.
Somebody changed our thing.
What?
What happened?
Oh, yeah. What are you doing over here?
I didn't touch it. All I can do is move it forward. All I can do is forward and back.
So you were blamed.
I feel like grandpa. I don't know what happened to the remote.
So three elements could be the rock or brick or other stone. It could be horizontal siding, it could be vertical siding, it could be stucco. There's all kinds of different elements, but we're not dictating this colors, Mr. Okay, I'm trying to think where I took this picture.
Local original paint
at. Yeah.
So this came up when we did a drive, went through a subdivision that had none, I mean, they only had one or
One,
two.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, one.
Yeah.
We're like, wait a minute, that just looks
Yeah.
vanilla. No,
No,
had nothing to do with those guys.
actually, this one has actually 4. if you look at
It has 4.
the picture because it's got the shingles on one side of it too. So it's just going to provide a little bit more creativity and aesthetically pleasing residential. Yeah.
We got more coming down the way.
And if you go, take a drive sometimes. I drove around for a couple hours going through just about every subdivision and was surprised even with like some of the like Hubbles and Corey's that they're already doing three elements. And they're actually Toll Brothers I found one with only 2, which really surprised me. But most of them are doing it right now. I don't think it's going to be too far of a leap for them to comply with this minimum standard. Some of the, I mean, I struggled because I was up at Colina Vista and I struggled because one house was completely stucco with just a little bit of rock trim. It's like, okay, well, how do you get, it's $1 million+ house, but it technically wouldn't meet this requirement. If you have any other ideas, we can do, dormers, we can do different colored vents. There's things, if you look at this one right there, they've got the wood coming out of the pitches there. So other things to kind of add to those elements.
And you're talking, this applies to the front.
Just
This is just, so yeah, so this
The
one.
front side
was titled
and
the
side
front
elevation.
and side, yeah.
because we have the rear, Kevin, that you talked about coming down further.
Okay. 2-story structures shall provide a minimum of 1 second-story side window per side elevation. So we've seen some of these, not too much anymore, but
Just a straight wall.
examples were just a straight wall, 2-story wall with didn't even have a band around it. So it's
Right.
with no windows, nothing. So this just gives a little bit more.
We add something like that to the British Motors. Made them put a window on that one side. Sorry.
That was one of our examples of our design review. We could have got it better if we had a committee.
Like we talked.
A single-family residential building, rear elevation minimum standards. Again, these are require zoning certificate approval. So, one, council can adopt those as part of the development agreement or preliminary plat approval. And I would say the council could also increase those minimums too, if they wanted.
It says minimum standards, yeah.
So minimum standard.
Add more.
So the following minimum standards shall apply to all new residential structures in all residential zones. Okay, so again, this is the back, these are the back of the buildings. Dwellings backing up to collector arterial streets shall have rear elevations and or architectural designs that provide depth and dimension, avoiding the flat wall appearance. These elements must be functional and may not be minimalized or created solely for the purpose of compliance to our provision. That was actually Councilmember Nielsen's words that I used
This
in
is
there.
something that our design review committee will catch this.
This
at
is,
our
this
city
is
council
what our,
meeting.
this is what our administrative.
Through the CZ
That's always-
process.
It doesn't,
That little group that we just.
can I ask
This
a
is-
question on I?
This is just the zoning, what we're charging with the building permit to review the
Right.
rebuilding.
It'll be these
Earlier
guys.
in this conversation tonight.
No,
Yes.
it's not that. It's not that. That's
Not the committee.
that's the
That's not the
commercial.
committee?
No.
That's a different one, commercial. This is, the committee is these
This is
two.
residential.
Yeah,
This is residential. This is,
The CZ thing.
so we'll do this when we look at setbacks. Look at, make sure that they're not.
Single story if
Single
it's
story
required.
house. We'll also look at the elevations, make sure they have the three elements that they provide rear elevations that we can adopt. and accept.
And yes, this is a result of what we saw at Ameristar on Plummer Road.
Yeah.
Right.
I know a few people live in there and they love it. But,
Well, that's fine. I mean, it's just the aesthetic of, look of that driving down on our.
so that
Collector.
leads me to my question on lowercase I in number 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
It says these elements must be functional and may not be minimalized or created solely for the purpose of compliance. Well, if you're compliant, you're compliant.
Well, so basically what that's
Very
saying
simple.
is, so but what that's saying is on that specific project, we made them come back and add these elements that really aren't functional, but just to break it up.
So you got a second story dormer window
So what
that
I'm saying is. if
is
your
not a
code
window to
allows
any-
For that,
Well, that's what we're saying.
your
We're
own
gonna
fault.
change that, and make that,
this provision says the code does not allow.
yeah, that's
well,
what
it
this is
says you
saying.
can't make it to the minimum. That's what it basically says.
No, it says it may not be minimalized. In oth-
Basically, just throw it on the wall, so
So
need
you
to
look at
look.
the
For the
back porch on
purpose of
those,
Compliance. So if compliance
walk
doesn't
out, you
allow
gotta-
that,
you got a 1 foot back porch, basically. You can't put a barbecue grill. You can't even hardly put a chair out there to sit and enjoy your backyard.
yeah, I've seen where they failed at that on those apartments on 16 that look like army barracks. Look like they should have had a porch and they just stopped. They're horrible. But I would just simply say, you can't do that. If you're saying minimalize to create purpose of compliance, well, make compliance impossible to minimalize too.
Totally agree.
So if
We
you
can reword that and make it
Yeah.
more specific.
It just
Just-
sounds,
just strike and may not be minimalized, they must be functional.
must be functional and compliant.
Yeah.
Functional and
Or
compliant.
created solely, yeah, must be functional.
I have to go to the
Strike
doctor.
the-
I'm not functional.
Strike the may not be
What
minimalized.
is the difference?
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
you're saying that those things can't
Well,
be
functional
done.
would be a window.
No, I did say when I gave you this that I didn't write it as code. These are ideas.
Welcome to my world. That's how I have my red lights.
I mean,
When you can put a chair on it and maybe a barbecue grill. I mean, something
are
more than what you see in
layperson
American
So
Star.
definitions that
what if you
allow.
were To say it can't be like a facade. I mean, is that what we're trying to avoid?
Can't be the headlights on a NASCAR, just stickers.
So we're trying to avoid, that window that's not really a window. It looks, it's a shutter. It looks like a shutter.
Yeah, that's the idea exactly is we don't want these elements to be added to the house. Just look, I gave you something that looks like a window. Here's some shutters. They're fake, but we're not looking for decorations. We're looking for functional architectural elements that. Look, I'm still trying to make amends for the worst
Well, we
disaster
change
my
everything.
time on the council.
Because of that.
It's all a recovery
This is just trying to create a code, try to create something that doesn't allow it to happen again without our review. Yeah.
We put so many conditions on that American Star development. And for what we did as a council to try to make that come in and look good. It's 180 degrees from what we thought it was.
You guys didn't do a development agreement.
It's because we had no development agreement with Teeth.
Well, that was an
was-
administrative faux pas, not a council
I got
faux
here,
pas.
I had nothing. I
But-
had nothing to.
But still, I mean, there were things that we talked about, like, that was supposed to have just beautiful landscaping along the street side. We really put a lot of conversation into that. And what did it turn out to be? It's a drainage ditch. It's just unbelievable to me. Every time I drive by that, I just want to cry.
Go by today and I had that same question.
And I'm
Because you
committed
look-
to not
you look at
letting
the
it
late- you look
happen
at the late-
again in our community.
Look at the later phase, the one that's north of it, and it's all the swale's grass. There's no standing water or anything in it. So I don't understand how.
That's where my friends live.
It's still designed as a
Designed, right?
wetland. There will be standing water.
I don't know. There wasn't today, but there was in the first phase. I mean,
Well,
we saw ducks.
the problem is they learned and they also just started buying pre-approved subdivisions, the whole subdivision. They didn't have to come back to us the other
Well,
time,
but again,
right?
we did have-
We'd done enough development agreement to make it nice.
but they did have to come back to us because I was stopping their development until they came in and sat down and talked about those houses and make them completely different, like what we were talking about in our council meeting. So you'll see those houses are not like.
Go through
things
Creek.
there.
Creekside, what is it? River Creek.
Yeah.
And that's why it's
Just
important.
look at how we progressed from that disaster that was American Star.
Yeah, we've come a long way, but look, this is why it's important that all of our code applies to these residential subdivisions equally, and that we minimize trying to call out build to rent or horizontal apartments, because it's going to be impossible for us to think of all the different ways they can come up with to build a cheap product and just move renters. And so soapbox done.
That's why the build to rents.
That's not true.
To get something.
Now,
Okay. John?
And then additional landscape buffers may be required. So that's
Did,
very.
did you
this
put
is-
that in instead of that huge paragraph I had on landscaping?
Yeah.
Oh,
I wanted it.
I'm gonna fight for specifics on that.
Well, yeah, but yeah.
Okay.
I was a little concerned about your
My counts?
your use of trees.
Yeah, well, drive by the places in this Treasure Valley that look beautiful. And I'm actually 50% of what some of those are.
Yeah.
In those
At
counts.
At full maturity.
Yeah.
That's the concern.
You're gonna have to define
Plant
the trees
We plant trees, street trees too close together.
together and like what they have on the street trees and
No,
make.
no, I'm not saying right next to each other, but look, there's a width component there. A minimum of, I think, of 25 feet or something like
You had
that.
3 at 35.
And
We currently have 35 foot,
One every
no,
35.
no,
every 35
you're
feet.
talking linear. I'm talking from street side to property line. You've got the width and then you've got the linear.
Okay.
And you've got the length, right? So within that width, when you can put on a 35-foot length within 25 or 30 feet of width, you can put 20 trees in there
Oh, I see.
and a whole
You're not
bunch of
saying just
bushes.
along the street. You're
So you're
the spot.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
I'm talking along
Yeah.
collectors
Right.
and arterials. Make them look beautiful. Make them look walkable and just amazing. That's what I envision.
Okay.
Like the subdivision's asking for on the backside of subdivision there on State. But
Heron River.
Legacy, Legacy?
the backside of Rockbridge,
Uh-huh.
where those neighbors have come in and complained about the townhomes that are approved and they want this much buffer and trees and all that. It's the same thing, right? More green buffer,
Right.
same thing, same principle.
My prime example is drive down Floating Feather, starting roughly at Linder and go all the way to Eagle Road and look on the side of the roads there. That's what I envisioned along our collectors and arterials.
The 50
Instead of a linear thing, you're spreading them, we have the linear, but you're adding more to it.
Right.
I get it. We couldn't understand what you were saying in there, but that
I
makes
know.
sense.
I talk Greek
Go
to
by Red
myself
Leaf
half the time.
Heights.
So
That's where that subdivision is called.
thank
It's
you.
Red Leaf Heights.
Thank you.
Beautiful there.
Okay. You got that now?
Yeah, because otherwise, if it was just linear,
That's what I thought you were saying.
that's like a tree every.
Yeah, I didn't know where you were going with that. I like that. Okay, so we need to we need to
Okay.
massage that one.
So Sean, like in this section, is it possible, have you seen it done at other places where they do anything with the driveway, like driveway standards, or do we have that somewhere else for the residential?
As far as,
For driveways, so like driveway width. So like the last week I went to many doors and noticed that like if they have sometimes just two cars in the driveway, you are in the grass to get to their front door because of the narrow width of their driveway. So I'm wondering if we can do anything to widen the width or put some standard, so that, or they have to have a dedicated sidewalk to their front door.
yeah,
Have you seen that anywhere or?
and I know what you're talking about.
Well, that-
Smaller cars.
I mean, there was a number of houses that I went to, and I mean, that's gonna be a private property thing also, but I think if, whatever standard width of a car is, it's not an additional 2 feet on each side, and then you got your width.
We usually have 20 or
Well, typically it's 20 feet.
So typically it's 16 feet, right? Is your typical garage. And what you see is you'll see them, if you pour concrete out to the edge, that's where you get dark in the
Yep.
grass. If you pour it right to where the inside of the garage meets the structure,
Yep.
that's where you are in the trouble.
Right.
And so,
So just say 20 feet minimum garage width.
so,
or
I mean,
driveway
you,
width.
with 20 by 20.
yeah, you could, but our depth is 20. We have a standard of 20 feet deep.
Yeah,
Yeah. but we
Yeah.
You're
don't
from the
have-
back of the
That's-
sidewalk to the face of the garage.
yeah. 'Cause like some of the homes, you have like hills, like they're up here and you got your street down here and, like just to get, again, to help create that community feel. We want people to be able to like easily go to their neighbor's house if they want to. So
So
the neighbor wants them there, but
I want to go back to her sidewalk thing because
What
that,
about those that don't want people visiting them?
well,
mean-
then they just should have moved to Star because we are a community.
so we,
If they get to my door, they earned it.
so basically
Broken.
you need to say it 10 foot per garage door
Per stall.
per stall. Because not everybody's
So a
going to do.
3-car
it.
garage then would
It's
have.
called a bay.
30 feet.
It's called a bay in a garage, not a stall.
But I want to go back to her sidewalk comment though.
Yep.
How do we fix that? Because when you look, even at the American Star, they've created and even the fire and the EMS guys have issues with getting gurneys into those places, the way that they created those sidewalks.
Yeah.
Right, where they kind of go to nowhere. And you can't get around. I mean, how do you address that?
Yeah, like the American Star, yeah.
Like American Star? Yeah, that hard turn.
Right.
ADA accessibility adds 2% to every home value or cost. And if you were to turn around and make homes ADA accessible, at least on the front like that, I think that would eliminate a lot of the issues with getting gurneys in and also getting people in to visit the neighbors. It's really not a lot more. Sorry.
No, it's not. And you could create, let's think about that a little bit, figure out how to make that work. Cause I know what you're saying on that.
So you'd have a sidewalk.
Well, not necessarily
The
the front,
curve.
Grass strip.
but maybe more flares out more on the corner to provide more easier way to get in. I mean, you can't plan everything for every gurney or anything like that, but you gotta make it so people can actually walk up to the,
Then you get someone that would argue that you're paving and putting concrete over the whole world, You're adding more
Right. And
hard
so I
space.
wonder if
Save
we could-
water.
If we were to limit it to, a 2-car garage or
Sustainable.
less, if they have to include, on each side. Yeah.
And 10 foot per bay.
Yeah.
I think
For
10
a
I think 10 foot per bay
2-car or
would-
less garage.
We'll do that.
that provides your walkway.
Right. Or they have to provide a separate walkway.
What are you thinking, Kevin?
From the sidewalk on the road.
You sure?
36 feet.
36.
Good play. Yeah. What's K? Oh. Yeah. So this is a controversial one around City Hall.
I'm surprised to see it.
The mayor,
I would like us to see us not tile all the ditches that we have in our community.
Really?
the mayor was under a little bit of stress last couple of weeks and he did get up and walk out of a couple meetings because we were fighting with him on this one.
We may.
It's up to you guys, but I just,
What is your reasoning for not,
we're
not tiling them or covering
we're
that?
tiling them now. I mean,
Right, so-
we're tiling ditches all over the place.
Yeah, we've
I
been
believe
asking people to
different
do
than
it.
what these two over here believe completely on our aquifers and stuff like that out here. If we're tiling everything, we're never gonna have water seeping in like they,
We have fought on this.
yeah, we fought on this, but I'm not gonna die on that hill, whatever you guys want to do. Let's just move on right now because this is seriously.
No, it's helpful to understand where you're coming from.
I'd
I'm
like to know
coming
both
from-
sides of the
I'm coming from
conversation.
water-
If we're
I'm
gonna.
coming from a water regeneration standpoint.
Yeah.
We're tiling every freaking ditch that we've had that created a lot of the shallow aquifers and stuff that we have around here. We're never going to have that recharge rate that we've had in the past,
Right.
right? That's a problem. And we're doing that everywhere, right? We're not, my thing is perforate the pipe, do something so you have some rechargeability in your system out here.
Could I hear the counter view of this?
He's going to say our water comes from Eastern Idaho in our aquifer. Yeah, right. For the deep water for the city, but the shallow waters for all of the folks that are on these wells are not.
I do like to poke the bear with the Eastern Idaho, which is more to poke the bear than anything else. But I will, one of my biggest counter arguments is with all the lawns and all the sprinklers that are going on, we're getting as much, and everybody seems to be building ponds now. We're getting as much groundwater recharge through irrigation and through ponds and through all of that as we were getting is leakage through ditches.
There's
I'm
no
gonna
way I'm
disagree
putting an
with
acre
that.
foot of water on my lawn.
Only because of my knowledge of Eagle Island's water that I've watched as I've pulled that pump over the last 25 years. It used to be a flowing artesian that would blow out of the water every time I lifted that pump. And it's down 12 feet that I know of last 2 months ago. So they keep saying the water's good, the water's good, the water's good, but it's going down and I have watched it. So I'm agreeing with the perforated pipe at minimum.
At a minimum, the thing is we got to just quit looking out for ourselves and look out for the community as a whole. There's a lot of wells downstream. They're at a shallow depth. They're not at the 300 and 700 feet that the city's at, right? And we continue to take away that source of recharge that started in the early 1900s that created this shallow well system that everybody's in.
There's probably a middle ground because
That's why I said perforate the pipe. It's easy.
Here's your drill.
Here's your drill.
look, the canals, they're going to see a certain amount, right?
Because of their.
But they're pretty contained and a lot of them are lined as well. The real problem from my perspective is we're no longer,
We're not irrigating
we're not
properly.
irrigating crops.
The
We're
only
not putting,
option you have is the canal system that we have to irrigate now to create that recharge.
well, the
take that
the
away.
more land we put houses on,
Right.
the lower those wells are going to go, regardless of what you do to the canals.
Yeah.
No, I disagree. I think you have an opportunity. I mean, even look at what we're doing up here. They elevated that whole property, took away all that extra water that's on top, right? It's going to flow it differently. I'm pointing to
of
Star
Star-
Point or
Yeah.
Oaklawn or
Oaklawn.
whatever we have up there on the
Yeah.
corner. We're creating problems without thinking about it.
Well, I think
And we
that-
need to try to create a solution for everybody that's down, not just for the city of Stark, but everybody that's downstream, because if his argument is true, that our water comes from the Eastern Idaho aquifer, shit, this could go 300-400 miles that way for shallow water. Right? I mean, it's the same argument.
Sounds like
So-
he's just poking the bear. Look, the number
He is
one,
poking the bear.
the number one concern I have with not doing this is just safety for citizens.
For what?
Because little kids fall in canals every year and drown.
And we did
That's
too.
my number one reason for asking all of these developments to cover the irrigation ditches. Because we're moving families in, people who don't understand, they didn't grow up on farms. They don't understand irrigation and water. And the kids aren't used to it.
But we're also putting a pond in that same neighborhood that we're tiling their ditch. That's the problem
You're
is,
right.
is you
And
put a decorative pond there and cover the ditch. It's still water that's not.
it's
gonna
still
be
water,
managed
but
all
it's
the
not
time.
water that's moving. I mean, ditches I understand the danger
The
there.
Pool is where a child dies.
I understand.
It's not moving.
Yeah, and my thing, Kevin, though, is perforate the pipe. If you want to tile it, then you perforate it. It's as simple as that. You provide that opportunity for that water to charge.
We know if the irrigation districts will allow that.
For drainage canals, they prefer the perforated pipe because the drainage canals are actually collecting that groundwater and trying to move it away from us. For supply lines, I honestly don't know that answer. I would,
Yeah, I mean, they would argue that they're going to lose water, but
They would,
They're
they would
already using
prefer to
water now,
tile
they're not-
every single
if they're-
thing with hard pipe, to prevent any loss of water because they have a requirement to deliver water downstream. That's their requirement.
they would,
It's up
they
to
would
us
like
to have
to
that
line,
negotiation.
they like the open channels, but they would like to concrete line them.
They want a concrete lined or pipe. They don't care.
Yeah.
As long as they can deliver that
Yeah.
water. If you could get rid of the evaporation that they have, they'd be more than happy.
Well-
Tickle pink, right? They're not going to like perforating the pipe because you're releasing some of that water back into the ground. It's as simple as that. It's a negotiation thing. I'm just saying that I think that that's what we should be doing. We need to be thinking about that for the future because we got to quit being so short-sighted on what's happening right now and look at what's happening in the future.
My concern is to require the perforation without having conversations with the irrigation districts because I don't want conflicting regulations between jurisdictions.
Conflict all the time.
Just put approved by the irrigation district.
Oh,
That's a start. I mean, it's
It's
a
a start.
start.
yeah.
So we are changing it to that they're just gonna be perforated and covered. If approved by the irrigation district. I mean, is it section K in there right now?
Well, it just needs to be, it needs to be reworked, basically, based on what we're talking about tonight. So let Sean play with that based on what we're saying.
Okay.
That I just want to say there's one other consideration here. And this is something that I saw when I lived in the Saddlebrook subdivision. When water is in the canal, probably 60 homes had water in their crawl space.
My very first house I built over here on Taurus, every one of those houses over here had water in the crawl space as soon as they were,
Right.
right? You're not seeing that now. You're not seeing that now. The water is receded that much and the groundwater here because of all the things that we're doing. And part of it, and you're right, Kevin, the houses are going on. We're not flood irrigating anymore.
Yeah.
We're not doing any of that. But if we take every aspect away, it'll never happen. If we don't give it an opportunity to recharge, then we're drilling recharge wells just to try to recharge some of that lower aquifers for people that live on these 5-acre plots and 1-acre plots that rely on that shorter, shallow well, right? I mean, it's an ugly dynamic that we just got to figure out, right? And make sure that we're listening to everybody, looking at everybody's.
We want to put something in here that says that we prefer to have the ditches left open with safety precautions.
I'd like to, I don't know, the
if-
Division of Water Resources, or is there a scientific community that can come out and give us guidance on?
I will tell you, Kevin, I have my next Treasure Valley Partnership meeting has the IDWR that's coming in to talk about all this stuff anyway. And I'll bring back all the information. I'll see if they'll come and talk to us.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful because I want to address the problem and
Yeah.
do it from both, public safety as well as, let's preserve our environment as well. So
Yeah.
it'd be helpful to get their input.
I'm going to tell you, having been in the engineering world for 23 years, you're not going to find a consensus. You're going to get people on all sides of this argument, even in the engineering world. And
And
a
you-
lot of
and you-
that,
You get that through IDWR too, because the last meeting we had, there was conflicting
Yep.
comments made by two different folks that work within that organization, right? That were talking to us. But it's just, we just gonna have to find common ground and try to figure it out.
And part of that is who you're working for. Irrigation district guys are gonna have different opinions than IDWR, that are gonna have different opinions than city engineers. So
The fact is, nobody can really guess where water is going to go or come from.
It's gonna.
there's truth to that.
Its own.
Groundwater is very hard to map accurately, and you can move 50 feet and get completely different.
Yep.
Hey, Ryan, let's stop and jump over to you for a little bit. You want to talk?
Yeah, we're gonna have to come back on, we'll stop at Article C. We'll do that at
Yeah.
a different time, just so we get through some of the.
We want to take a 5-minute health break.
No,
You want to pile through? Okay.
we're
let's
pile through, and if you gotta go, if you got a health thing, take care of it.
Zach's side.
It came in an email.
Well, we had all this last week. He sent it all out to everybody last week, but they made some adjustments and changes to it all the way through right before the meeting.
That was a copy.
It was an attack.
It was a second email that came out.
I didn't see it.
So the funny thing is, because originally, so he sent out the original one, and then I made a comment, what about this other part? And then he sent out that, oh yeah, he sent that out right after. So probably tied together.
Here we go. Let's jump right into this stuff then. We're going to go through some of the suggested municipal code updates. Just so you can see, we want to clarify the code, make it a little bit easier to understand. We worked with city staff, the police chief, the Ada County Sheriff's Department, their legal counsel, the fire chief, the fire marshal, and the city attorney. So we tried not to make this stuff up. We tried to get all the right folks involved so that we had some good feedback. So the print, I'm cheap, so I didn't print in color, but on the slides, everything in yellow will be our current code. Everything in white will be the proposed changes. I did not print in color to try to save an ink cartridge, but we're going to start in section 521, which is definitions. One of the things we've had some opportunities with recently is overnight parking and living in RVs and that kind of stuff. So we're going to address that a little bit here. Currently, we do not have a definition in our code for overnight parking. It does not exist. We are proposing overnight parking be defined on city property as the period from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or 12 hours of continuous duration. And this will allow a little bit better definition for our friends at the Sheriff's Department to be able to enforce overnight parking. And so one of our other goals with doing some of this is, as you know, we're having some challenges with our friends at the prosecutor's office and trying to take up some of our misdemeanor offenses. We're hoping that by working with the Sheriff's Department and their legal staff and our legal staff, that this will help that a little bit by clarifying and providing some additional definitions on this. And certainly Chief and the fire marshal are here. So if you have any specific questions that I can't answer, I'll certainly lean on them. So any thoughts on overnight parking? Councilman Niels.
I like this definition specifically because it means we have to finish council meetings by 9:45. So
we do indeed, or we will be parked illegally. And Chief will be sitting outside waiting for us.
you know, for circumstances like that, for people who have rented the River House, I think we need to have some language that addresses that. But otherwise, yeah, this is.
Saying
So-
if it's continuous from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., it doesn't
Correct.
mean that if they go to 11, they're in violation. Yeah, let's.
So
I know what
then-
I know what you're saying, Kevin, but that's not what that.
yeah, so let me come here and we're going to talk about section 527 of our current code, which talks about extended parking is prohibited. If you'll notice over there, our current code is quite lengthy. We have quite a bit in there. We talk about 72 hours, 24 hours here, 2 intersecting streets. There's a lot in there. And working with the legal, we tried to clarify it a little bit and make it a little bit easier. So I just give you a second to read that. You probably don't need me to narrate, and then we can talk through it.
I guess the key word there is overnight.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, from what you were saying, you mean?
Yeah.
We have a city council meeting that goes overnight. We got bigger problems. David's gonna have some.
Those ones are usually
Issues.
at the church, so we're not on city property. We're okay.
So any thoughts on any of the proposed change there? This really is to allow, it's really to make it clear, more clear and understandable, is really the purpose. And those are direct comments from council with the sheriff's office. That's really the purpose for the change.
So, Chief, at what point would you look at a vehicle that's parked between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. and say, I'm going to ticket this vehicle under the overnight provision?
Right. I think what it is so with the extended parking prohibited, this is going to come in effect when people call in and say, hey, that car's been parked there for a long period of time. We're not really looking at cars that, like you say, they park at the River House and they're there till midnight. We're not very concerned about those. The issue we're running into is people who call in and say, hey, that car's been parked there and it's been parked there for 2 days at the public park. Say by the skate park. This allows us to, when we do cite them, that no overnight parking, that it was between the hours of 10 to 6 there, no one was around and we couldn't get a hold of anybody, so we ended up citing them. Because we're gonna do our due diligence, we're gonna run that plate, we're gonna find out who they are, we're gonna make a phone call, hey, why is this car parked here? There's been times where people broke down and that car's parked there because they're broke down, so we're like, okay, as long as you move it the next morning, we're fine with it. The issue we're running into with this was there was no definition of the overnight parking. And so if somebody goes and parks there at 1 o'clock and then walks to their friend's house and stays the night at their friend's house, is that overnight parking? And I don't know. So this just kind of allows more for if they go to court and try to fight it, we can show that we have that definition.
So under this definition, then parked at 1 a.m., slept at a friend's house, yes, that's overnight
Correct. Yep.
Cool.
They were just skating at the skate park.
So at the very beginning, that says upon any street or alley. So even like in a neighborhood, you have a guest, and they're, for 3 days that are staying there and they're not moving their car. And then a neighbor calls in and says, hey, there's been this car out parked down the street. We don't like people parking in the street. What can you do about it? And so would this then allow the neighbor to complain and file a complaint, and you would have to go over there and possibly cite them?
Yeah, so we currently have, Ada County has a code too, and there's an Iowa statute too that essentially says you can't park for longer than 72 hours without the car being used. Now, if you're using that car every day and it's not just parked there and collecting weeds underneath it or brush, there's not much we can do. But if it's like a boat or an RV that they park there and it's longer for the 72-hour period, then if they call in and complain, we can use this city code that matches pretty identical to the Ada County code. We can use it to make sure it's we can cite for that.
Don't we have a neighborhood though that says, you can't park on the street? Like their residents are not allowed to park on their street through their HOA.
So let me add clarity to that. So the HOA can put that in place. According to legal counsel, we've debated this a lot. When you sign the closing documents and the information on the HOA, that's a contract. You are agreeing to abide by that contract. And if the contract says per the HOA, you're not going to park on the road, then yes, the HOA can enforce that. He's not going to write a ticket on it because it's a public street. But the HOA could lien your house. If the HOA has fining capabilities, they could issue fines. They could do those things, but it would be all strictly through the HOA and not criminally.
Is that,
What it is, the HOA doesn't own the road. So the HOA helps maintain the subdivision, but those roads are public roads. And so we can't enforce HOA rules on a public road.
And if it's a private road with the
yeah, let's
HOA,
talk about the private roads that
So-
we've approved.
He's not going on a
you're
private.
not
So
going on
it's
it,
just
you've got
like at
no
a Walmart.
jurisdiction.
Walmart can have it towed off of there if they want, but we can't go on there. And we'll go as a courtesy and maybe make a phone call and mediate between Walmart and whoever the owner of the car is. But we don't have any teeth on private roads or private parking lots. So we'd have to defer to them if they want to, if the HOA want to have it towed and it's a private road and they want to have it towed, they can call a tow company and have it towed away. But we as law enforcement can't write a citation on it.
So therein lies a topic for another discussion, that our discussion on our acceptance of private roads and how willingly we want to have those in our community because of the limitation it places on law enforcement. That's a topic for another discussion and another day for sure. So, thank you, Chief. Any other questions on extended parking and prohibited?
So I guess, yeah, sorry. Just so I'm
fine.
clear. So if I have friends come over and stay the week with me and they're not driving their car, could a neighbor call them in and they be cited for parking on the street in front of my house?
Technically, yes. So it's still, there is a law stating you can't do that, but there's also officer discretion. I would highly encourage any star officer, if that's the case, the way you just explained, that they're going to explain to the neighbor, well, yeah, but there's family visiting or friends visiting. It's still a movable car. They still use it. And we would encourage, if it's not blocking anything, then we probably wouldn't take action on that, if that makes sense. But this whole thing, so a lot of these codes, as we go through this, when we cite somebody, they have a right to go fight it in court and explain to a judge of what is reasonable, right? And so if it's reasonable that they're parking that car because say they went on a trip, they flew, I just had family members that parked their car at my house. It was in the driveway because I've been up there, but say it was parked on the road. They went to Brazil for a week and then they came back. Well, I'm not going to drive their car around. It's not my car. Now I'd have keys to it if I need to move it for somebody, but essentially I still could explain, well, yeah, that car, yeah, it has been parked there for longer than 72 hours, but it's not blocking anything and it's not causing any problem. Does that make sense? I hope I'm making sense there. This is just for the person who decides to have a broke down car that doesn't move, that's collecting, weeds and different things underneath it, that we need to take action on it. Or it's causing a problem to where people can't access into their driveway or they can't pull, it's causing some type of nuisance.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, technically anywhere in Ada County, you can't park a car longer than 72 hours, or it can be.
Okay, thank you.
Right, should this differentiate between public and private? You're just stating,
We just say public roads on public roads.
Yeah,
Do you-
you're
should
just-
we
you're
do
just
it on that
saying-
public on that.
well, yeah, because if someone from one of our private road developments tries to use this section, they wouldn't know that this only applies to public.
You good with that, Chief?
So they can hold,
Any public street or public alley.
so as they write their HOA rules and requirements, they can put teeth in it to maintain their own roads.
We can add that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right, perfect. We'll add that. Great questions. We'll continue with adding some definitions in 322 noise control. Sorry, let me find my remote here. Oddly enough, in the city code, we do not have a definition for continuous noise. I think we have examples in the city, but we don't have a definition. So we are proposing that the definition of a continuous noise be any noise that lasts for 30 minutes or longer. Very simple, any noise. We'll get into some additional types of noises here in just a minute, Councilman.
When you use the term lasts, that seems to imply continuity. Some noises are on and off, repeated. That may not be a noise that lasts.
So we are going to get into that. I believe, give me a slide or.
I'm just thinking for the definition, maybe we want to include that any noise that is
Repetitive?
repeated or a continuous for 30 minutes or longer.
Irritating to the neighbor.
Okay.
Some neighbors are a little more sensitive than you're
30
looking for.
minutes.
So let me, I don't disagree. Let's go through the next two
Sure.
slides and then let's come back and touch on that and see if we need to update that definition or not. So then the next slide is plainly audible. So we have a current definition for plainly audible, and we are proposing that this be cleaned up and simplified with what is proposed there. So take a quick peek at that for me, please.
Whether it's raised or normal, could be Sam Rosti.
What about, I mean, just people using hearing aids? I mean, that is a normal noise for like, you know, people that
Mhm.
don't wear them. And so, it, you know, it's not like you're putting an amplifier, whatever, you know, to,
That's why it says unaided hearing faculties.
yeah, but if they're wearing a hearing aid, that's an aided
Correct.
faculty.
Right.
So then
Sounds
plainly
like-
audible would not, has a different definition for them.
Long ways with my hearing aids.
Yeah.
But
Trust
still,
me,
like
with
if
the-
it's irritating to you, like,
It irritates me. I take them off at home so I have to listen to everybody.
So what the purpose of
Simple
this
as
one
that.
is so people don't get their hearing aids and turn them way up, like, oh, I can hear something clear down there. It's just, it's for the person who has normal capabilities of hearing. They're not trying to amplify to be able to listen better. That a reasonable person who has the, I guess, I don't know how to put it, the normal amount of hearing that a normal person has, that they can hear the
right.
the noise.
So if you have your hearing aid in though, and you just need it for everyday use, but there's this noise that's really bothering you, and you can't hear it when you take it out, then it wouldn't fall in
If-
this definition.
That's correct.
Okay, but for a normal, it's for somebody that's not wearing a hearing aid and they can hear the noise, they're not in the same area, so they are not gonna make the complaint. You see what I'm saying there? That,
Well, but if we get there and they're saying, hey, I can hear it, well, I'm 100 feet away and it's still bothering me,
yeah,
and I can hear it, then that's what we'll testify in court too, that it's plainly audible to me too.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? We're not excluding people that just have hearing aids. The
Okay,
intention is
that-
not to exclude them.
what I.
The intention is
how you
just
did
not
it.
to get the person who puts on the gun shooting earmuffs and turns it way up to be able to hear, you know, the
Yeah,
the
yeah.
far
I
away
guess
sounds.
With a parabola.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just want to make sure we're not leaving out people that use hearing aids.
Nope.
Okay.
That's not the intention of this
I think
at
it's
all.
just setting a baseline of what's reasonable and objective, right?
Okay. Okay,
And to go back to what Chief has said, that's where officer discretion comes into play as well, is that they have that. The next slide then is prohibited acts noise. So we currently have a noise ordinance. I think we're all aware of it, 10 p.m., 7 a.m. It's currently there stated in yellow on the slide. It's on the left side there. We're proposing to make some changes to it to clarify it and to make it a little bit easier to understand. And so that is listed there. You can take a peek at that, please.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So in this automobile or machinery or other sound,
Mhm.
is that covered in the Right to Farm Act that we have on most subdivisions? If that's a farming implement causing
Covered.
noise in the night, is that an issue?
No, it is not.
That
And
should be
it's
exempt.
other sound amplifying equipment. And so, but strictly no. So if there is a group of subdivisions already there, and then I decide to go in and start to farm a piece of land that was never farmed before, it doesn't have the exemption on it. So if I wanted to go farm this common area in a subdivision, that's not going to happen. That is a noise violation.
Right, but if you're farming down the backside of a new subdivision,
There is no violation there.
how did we say that here?
I believe there's an exception. I don't see it in there. I believe there's an exception in there for
There
for
is.
that.
It's already listed in our code.
Yeah.
the exception. So yeah, so these are just the proposed changes that we're making, but that is there. I will find that and send that to everybody so that everybody
Yeah,
has
that's-
it.
But I just thought if it were here, would be more clear so it's farming is still gonna be okay wherever you're needing it to be.
We can add
okay.
it.
Well,
That's all I'm asking.
Applies.
We can add it.
Right, yeah.
And
Throw the right to farm act applies, it's fine with me.
every plat that is recorded in Star has the right to farm act on that plat.
And
Yes,
That's
but
going to apply regardless of any code we write.
Correct.
Correct.
just so that it's clear in continuity is all I'm saying.
But the thing is, we
People
got so many
moving in
people,
are looking for a reason.
we got so many people that moved in
Yeah.
that are not used to that.
Yep.
That we just clarify.
Yeah, we'll add it.
It says the right to farm act applies.
Yeah, we'll absolutely add it. Mac, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
It's actually in there in 325.
Okay.
There's like 15 exceptions, including farm.
Thank you.
Emergency vehicles.
That's right. Don't put your
Yeah.
sirens.
Yeah, you can cite yourself for running code. So then we'll go to section 324 is specific noises enumerated. And so Councilman Nielsen, I'm not sure if we'll catch in the next couple of slides, if we'll catch kind of what you were talking about. And if not, we'll go back and we can adjust that. So currently we're talking about animals in this piece and proposing that we remove animals from this section and move it down to section 4-4-15. And I'll go over that here in a few more slides, but that's what we're proposing right here in section 3.2. 324 is to just remove animals. And then also in section 324, we have a definition of noises enumerated from construction noises. And it has been proposed that we maintain this code, but then we add on the end of it, Councilman Wheelock, some teeth as I appreciate your attention to. Failure to comply with these requirements may result in a stop work order. So construction basically says if they're doing this between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., then they're in violation, and failure to do that may result in a stop work order. So not only can chief or his deputies go out and issue a citation, but then from the building department, we also could have additional teeth and we could put stop work orders in place until the issue is resolved.
This helps give us more teeth because they have a challenge with this unless their peace cannot be disturbed.
Correct.
A police officer's peace cannot be disturbed. So if the person that is calling in the complaint is not willing to sign the complaint, then there's nothing that anybody can do on his end, but on our end, we can put a stop work order on that. So that's why I like that, right? And I will tell you, I go out at 5 a.m. driving
Oh, yeah.
around
It's a big problem
know,
in summer.
and yeah, and I'll call, and I'll sign a ticket if I have to, because some of these guys will work early in the morning and
Yeah.
create issues or bring concrete trucks in with
Mhm.
beeping horns and all that kind of stuff. So
And it might be something for us to consider. I think Councilman Nielsen, you said absolutely not, I believe, when we've talked about it before about moving our time to earlier than 7. There are some jurisdictions that do have a summertime ordinance in place, and it goes to 6. That might be something we consider. It's up to you guys if we want to increase that or add something to the code for that. The
It's called
comment, so
daylight savings time, and it occurs twice a year.
right.
And I'll share with you that babies don't know what summertime is.
I agree
So
100% with you. I'm not supporting it one way or another. I just know that as I did go on a ride along this summer because we had a lot of habitual offenders,
right.
the excuse we got continually from the framers and the roofers was heat stroke and heat exhaustion. And we're constantly saying, well, then you should have water. We tried to educate, right? But that's the constant that we got. So
Yeah, I'd be interested in the data of how many,
I
people
agree.
are actually treated for heat stroke and heat exhaustion.
people are worried it's dark and they're on top of these roofs.
Right?
More than heat stroke later in the day.
They can easily stand on the roof if they can skate in the dark.
Right.
So, okay. And then the next one is it's noises enumerated demolition. We currently have a code, or our definition for demolition And we're suggesting that we change this title from demolition to motor vehicle mechanic work. As you read through there, it doesn't really
Pertaining to demolition.
pertain to demolition. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
This is for the loud neighbor that's working on his car at 10:30 o'clock.
So
Glad we
like
like
a
phonograph in here.
I know that's the one I thought too. I'm happy to strike phonograph, but it's so funny. I wanted to kind of keep it in there.
And then again, this is between 10 PM and 7 AM.
That is correct.
So you're not trying to address Cindy Maliwacki's complaints in these updates. Okay.
That's correct. Right? Yeah.
MP3 players.
Wait, what's that?
Kevin's out there playing
Yeah,
the
hold on real
oboe
quick.
at 10:30.
So are you on radios? Is that where you guys are at? So to go back to that complaint specifically, Kevin, so that's why we've added failure to comply will result with these requirements may result in a stop work order. So we now have some teeth that we can go out there and say, turn your radio down. And if they don't turn it down, we'll just issue a stop work order
How
So
long does the stop work order affect?
as long as I want it to be.
you're talking any hour then, not just between 10 and 7.
On this, correct. So in talking, so Chief and I, and he can elaborate on this, we actually had a conversation about that specific complaint because they did receive the complaint at the sheriff's office as well. I think all of you received the email. I spoke with her. I'm sorry, I emailed with her after I called the developer and expressed to the developer that they needed to take care of it or I was going to stop work. So they're outside, even within our noise ordinance hours, there can be a violation that they can address. And I, Chief, if you want to speak to the specifics of that, please.
Yeah, there's a few outside the normal 10 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning. There are some things that we can still enforce noise wise. And so if you're playing a loud radio, that's one of the things that in our city code that we actually can still enforce. That's something we spoke to her about.
Mhm.
We still can enforce that. You can always, the catch-all for all this is disturbing the peace. If it can articulate it and it's disturbing your peace, we can always go forward on that. But the issue, it comes back to what the mayor stated that a lot of people don't want to get involved with being the complaining party because they don't want to go through the court process. So the city code does have where if you're playing a loud radio or something that amplifies noise and you're playing that's obnoxious, then yeah, we can go move forward and cite somebody for that.
Which is proof that the courts are more of a disturbance to peace than radios.
Right.
Now, in all reality, if you write a citation for disturbing the peace or whatever the noise violation that you deem is correct, is there a prosecutor that's going to take that, or is that just going to wash its way away?
So
How do we fix that in our city side?
No, that's a very good question because some of the issues that have come up with us citing when it comes to the prosecutors, whenever we as a city come up with a city code, you have to vet that to make sure it's not against the Constitution, right? So the more we can use the same wording they already have in Ada County Code and use that for city code, the better chances we have the prosecutor taking it and actually charging it. And so you'll see, especially coming up here about dogs and different things, we're almost verbatim, word for word with the Ada County Code. Because we as law enforcement, like the Star Police Department, we can enforce city code and we can enforce Idaho statutes. We can't enforce Ada County Code inside the city. Now, if we step outside the city, I can enforce Ada County Code, but inside city limits, I can't. So the catch to that is looking to see, okay, here's a problem we're having in the city of Star. Is there an Ada County Code that would address this problem that we can use almost the same verbiage on and add that to our city code?
Chief, what about Canyon County side?
Canyon County, same.
Would it be with the Ada County code?
So I'd have to look to see. I'm sure I'd have to see. We want to use probably the Canyon County code on that side because it could be a different prosecutor's office. But I think it's going to be okay. We could probably use the same verbiage because if Ada County is enforcing that law, it's already been vetted for constitutional purposes. So Canyon County probably is going to be okay with it on their side, if that makes sense. So I think it'd be just fine. So I haven't looked to see what the differences are between Canyon County Code and Ada County Code. But I'm hoping I can just keep the same exact verbiage on both sides, that we're not trying to play with that. But I'm guessing it'll be just fine because it's been vetted through the civil process and making sure it's constitutional. So I hope that answers your question there.
So Councilman Nielsen, we're going to move into animals at this point. So I wanted to go back to your question on the definition. Would you still like to add something to that definition of noise there at the beginning of continuous noise? I'm sorry.
If I understand your question correctly, are you wondering if what we read through so far satisfactorily addresses the definition of a noise that lasts?
If I understood your question right, and I may not have, you were about maybe noises that were intermittent, that maybe had lasted for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And if we needed to add something to continuous noise on that. So I'm happy to do that. Just curious on what your thoughts still were.
Look, I'm in a logical thinking mode, right? And usually laws are interpreted logically. And so to me, the definition of lasts could be technical.
Okay.
And you may have a horn, an alarm that's going off intermittent. Is that a noise that lasts, or is it not? And I think on a technicality, that would not be a noise that lasts. So dogs are a good example, something like that too. I think it'd be really easy in that brief definition to say a noise that lasts or intermittently persists, something like that.
Okay, absolutely.
No, I think that's
Good with that, Chief?
Yep.
Okay.
And then we get the defense attorney not to argue with. It's always a good thing.
Right.
I'm sorry, Councilman Nielsen, say that again for me. Intermittently
Persists.
Thank you. Perfect. Okay. So noted. What? All right. So now we're going to jump into noises, but we're going to jump into animal noises.
My favorite.
I'm not looking for any examples yet. But habitual barking or noise making. Our current code does define this on the left of the paper, or on yellow on the slide. I apologize. Some of it got a little small because we start to get into some really long stuff. But we are proposing a change here. This change is coming from Ada County. And I believe, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, we're trying to basically start to mirror some of the Ada County code as we get into these next animal ones. Is that correct?
Correct. So it'll do a couple things for us too. One, the prosecutors could be more happy with it because it's already a code they're familiar with. But two, with us having the Humane Society now doing all our animal control, they already know the Ada County code, so it'll be easier for them too. It's just same across the board. So that's kind of why we're just borrowing their language to help.
This
the
is
problem.
verbatim their code?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Yeah, good question. And you're going to see that it continues onto the next slide as well. It's a kind of a long one. It continues on and goes through the next couple of slides. And then
It does have did add a cat ordinance there.
you will see as we do get into it, it does get us into the impoundment portion.
Well, so we need to change the verbiage on that proposed change, though.
Well, I left that in there because it's the fee that has been established by the board of the Ada County Commissioners.
Right, but we can change that to us because we're gonna have to establish it with him through a different resolution.
And that was going to be my question to you is if we just wanted to leave it, we could just adopt it. Right. And so it would say,
But we still have to adopt it the correct way, don't we?
correct. We're not talking about the fees right now. I'm just talking language. And I was going to say, we could either leave that in there that it's been set by their resolution. And we could say that the city council of Star adopted on, or that was my next question. If we want to change them, we can change the fees too. Like I'm fine with those cat fees being $100 a cat. I mean, drive them.
I think we need to get with Idaho Humane Society on the fees. I mean, what fee structure are they using? Are they,
So this is their fee.
This is
this
their
is the same
structure.
structure that they use?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
I think they just updated all this back in June.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, and they just barely updated their whole animal control section, I think back in June on all this. This is all updated.
Okay.
Should be.
Oh, and I believe what Max said, hopefully everybody heard that. This should be what we agreed to when we signed the agreement with them, was these fees. Is that your understanding, Mac?
Yeah, I think most times when you make an agreement with them, you're adopting each other's fee structures. And I just have to look
But there
back and
was
look
some
at that.
discussion that that was still being worked out when we signed the agreement.
Well, there's some stuff being worked out on licensing.
Yes.
Okay. so
It's the
that-
licensing aspect on
not-
whether we're gonna have them licensed, and I think we're and share back and forth. yeah.
Correct. And then after that, it goes into,
Hey, Ryan,
oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Councilman.
sorry, can I back up to 4415,
For,
habitual barking or noise making?
yes.
So looking at item 1A and B, those items, A addresses, noise making by animals incessantly for 30 minutes, no individual period of silence more than 1 minute during the 30-minute period. B addresses intermittently for a total of 60 minutes or more. Is intermittently, do we understand this? Is intermittently different than incessantly? Are these two different definitions? So, for example, a dog could bark once every 2 minutes for a total of 60 minutes and not be incessant barking, but it could be intermittent barking. Is that what we
I
understand?
think that's how we understand it. Yes. Chief, I know we talked about this the other day a little bit. Any additional thoughts on that?
No, I think you're looking at that correctly, which, again, this is Ada County Code, and I couldn't imagine somebody sitting there with a timer and timing. Okay, that was only 2 minutes apart.
I can
That was a minute.
imagine it.
Oh,
Oh, well, we've gotten those coming in. But I wouldn't want to ask our
officers.
our deputies, or more importantly, our community members to do that, right?
Right.
Our citizens here to sit there and have to time it out, and that way they can tell us.
Those are contractions are.
Yeah. And so it's going to come down to when we're meeting with them, how they're explaining it, and testify in court.
Okay.
This is what's going on. But
All right.
I don't know why they have those two different. It was weird when we read it earlier too. So
Okay, thanks. Moving on.
no, great question. I'm glad you asked that. Councilman Wheelock, I think the next, as we get into this, I think this might come a little bit with, as far as noises go, at least to our livestock friends. We currently have an exception in place for livestock, and I don't know why it's on there twice. I left it in there to show that we do have an exception for livestock. But there is no change to that. We're not proposing any change to that. We have an exception in place. I actually thought I deleted it actually from the slide, so I apologize that it's in there twice.
Painting goats are okay.
A calf that's getting weaned
Oh,
is what we're talking about.
Yep.
Or branded.
Okay. Then again, we're proposing in section 4415 also, we're still there with our animals. We're proposing to add the following here. Proof of habitual barking or noise making. So take a quick read through that. And we're proposing this to be added. So it's not something that was there before, but we're adding it.
I think I got ahead of you. What item are we looking at?
keep going.
So,
Kevin. Keep going the other way. The other way. Keep going
Or-
deeper into the path.
He said proof of,
Or
Yeah, right here.
15
It's like this.
current versus proposed, and I apologize.
well, we have like
Slide number.
pages 4415.
So
Is the voice recording got to be date coded or anything?
for today,
I'm with you.
I don't know.
You know what I
We're-
mean?
This
Because
is a workshop. We'll approve it at the council. I'll make sure there's page numbers at the
oh no,
council.
I'm saying the
So,
recording of a barking dog.
oh, I got you, of the barking dogs.
They can record that anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
it's a good point. So we look at probable cause, and probable cause is just 50.1% that we're sure they committed this crime. So if somebody wants a doctor, a dog barking, and they do that, I guess hopefully in court, that's on them. But if I don't think we want to get in the weeds of, hey, is it, you know, the exact date and time, did it happen tonight? If they're saying, hey, this is happening, this is currently happening, I just recorded this, here's a noise to it. And I think that's enough for us at least to get it to the prosecutor's office. And if the victims, or not the victims, it's the perpetrator who owns the dog, if they want to try to say, hey, that's actually not our dog barking, I guess in court they can try to bring it up. But for us, I think it's just reasonable that, hey, here's this dog continues barking. Here's the audio recording of it that I just recorded, and I'd like to get the habitual barking on them. So if that, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just
Good
curious
question.
what your-
That is a good
No, that's-
What
question.
your question would be.
Good
what your
question.
Standard would be, whatever that is.
Well, that wraps up animals. I know you're still reading, so I'll let you keep reading. We're going to move into definitions and discussions around open containers and public locations. Are you good? Okay, all right. I thought you needed a refill as we're going to take a break. So, okay, I guess, thank you, Councilman Hershey. We're going to plow right through. Section 491 is, again, definition section of that. We currently have a definition of street. We've had a lot of discussion around this, and as you can tell from tonight's discussion, the whole private and public. So we are proposing that we change that from what we currently have to what is listed there today as public street. Shall include alleys, lanes, courts, boulevards, public ways, public squares, public places, and sidewalks. And I think now that we've had this discussion, and Sean, after what you suggested, are we okay with that, or do you think we need to put in front of it public alleys, public lanes, public courts, or do you think it does it already? Okay, I just want to make sure that we're all
I'm not
Good
sure
there.
it does it on sidewalks because we put sidewalks all over the place in private areas and subdivisions and things like that. Or-
public places and public sidewalks. Is that what you're recommending?
Right.
Okay.
And I think that would cover the case where we require a developer to provide easement.
Easement. Mhm.
Then that creates a public sidewalk, but in cases where we have not required that, then
Okay, I like it. Okay, we'll make that addition.
So do we need?
oh,
to-
sorry.
Sorry, do we need to, for a private street, private road? I mean, was that defined in the street definition before? And now we're taking it out and just saying, like, this is just public street.
So
We are just talking public streets here.
491 is Michael Key's thing for open container.
Correct.
So that unfortunately did not get codified in there, but it's specifically talking about the street for open containers for the beer in the park, that kind of thing.
So
Does that make sense?
So it truly is public. We wouldn't enforce a open container. So 491 is, this whole next station is open container. And so we wouldn't enforce open container on a private street. Because, yes,
Do we want to add, someone just brought this up over here, do we want to add public pathways?
we have, well, it's not a definition of street. Is a pathway a street?
Are you saying the sidewalks within a street? Is that what that referring to?
Oh, good point. Yeah, okay. So
Because
add pathways.
again, if we establish a public easement, then it's
Okay.
like a public right of way.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, add pathways. I like it. Councilwoman Salmonson, your brow's furrowed a little bit there still. Do you still have a
Well,
question?
maybe the public ways, that's a pathway.
Covered that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the public ways covered it.
But I mean, if we want to just be on the safe side, and include pathways, I think, why not?
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll add it. Absolutely.
No drinking and walking.
Hey, no lines, who knows, right? So are you okay on the private then, on your question on private street there? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So let's move to the next slide then. It says section 492, which is the section's titled Unlawful to Have Possession of an Open Container. So basically, we have our current code in place. As you remember, this came before council and it was presented and it was approved. And what we've gotten suggestions from the sheriff's office and sheriff's office legal is that we remove section D, which is upon any public or private property if open to the public. That is, that's going to be extremely hard to enforce for the sheriff's department, and could actually cause enforcement issues when it doesn't need to be. And so we have been suggested, we've had it suggested to us to remove that, and also to remove E and move it, move the definition of beverage in parks to the end of this section, which I'll show you in a couple slides. So we've just been asked to make those modifications from our legal counsel. Any thoughts there?
So for the private parking lot, if open to the public, what does that mean? Like if can we enforce it, I guess, on a private
That's why we're
parking
taking it
lot?
out.
So, but that's an item B.
You're saying in
Oh, I
any
got
public
you.
or private parking lot, if open to the public?
Yeah.
So if they're drinking
Oh.
in at Walmart instead of or Albertsons and they have that an open container in their car, that what you're saying?
I don't know, maybe just give me an example of when you could. So if a private parking lot open to the public.
Well, you have two different, one's the parking lot, and one's the property. You're taking out the property. Why are we not taking out the parking lot?
I'm taking out what I was
I know what-
advised
that's
to
what
take
you're
out.
asking.
Right, but I mean, is a parking lot enforceable?
No.
But the property is not?
Go to Albertsons and have a beer in the middle of the parking lot. in
I
a
guess-
Chair.
Well, I think property.
Is that what we're
being-
talking about?
In your camper.
So think of Albertson, the big Albertsons in Meridian, they've got an open bar in there, right? So that would be private property. But in the parking lot, if somebody just decides to park a truck back there and, decide to have a kegger or something, that'd be in the parking lot. So I think that, to me, that would be one of the difference, an example.
So just kind of, I'm thinking my way through this. So let's focus on D for just a second. The reason why we're removing that is essentially what D is stating is I can arrest somebody in a bar for drinking. And the legal counsel is like, we don't want something in there that, now we would never do that, obviously, but that's what that's stating, that gives us allowance to do that. With B, that's being in control of a vehicle, right, in a parking lot. So if somebody's sitting with a vehicle running in an Albertsons parking lot and they're drinking because it's open to the public and they're drinking in there, then we can take enforcement action on that because they're in that vehicle. That's how I read that. Does that make sense?
So even if they're not in a car, but they're on the private property, private parking lot having a drink, can you arrest them?
Even if they're sitting in the driver's seat, but the car's turned off, we can't. If the car's running and they're sitting in the driver's seat, now they have control of that vehicle, and it's actually running. They have the opportunity to drive drunk, essentially. Then we could take
You need
enforcement
to
action.
Okay.
find that more.
So the car is the key there. I mean, even to be outside of a bar in the parking lot and you're having a drink, I mean, could you?
I think that if I just meant this section is possession.
Right.
The next section is consumption. So I think we do make
But
a little bit of a differentiation there.
But what I know what she's asking.
Oh, I do.
though,
I agree.
You're the only way that this is a violation is if it's in a running vehicle.
Right.
It's not a violation any other time.
Isn't
And so do we need to
stated.
clarify that more that says it's a running vehicle? So people understand that.
Well, but this is all about this is all has to do with this came to, I'm trying to think of, this came up because we wanted to allow people to have a beer at the park. I think is what this came up as. And so we went through and tried to figure out how to allow that, but also still give us the teeth. Well, no, hold on. Let me
Right,
back
'cause
up a little
I
bit.
almost want, so for example.
No,
I think
I'm
of-
off. That's 495. I'm getting confused. Apologize. So no, 492 had more than less of people walking up and down the sidewalk with a beer and causing problems outside. So let me step back because that's 495 is what I was talking about. Yeah, because essentially if you're drinking at the Albertsons parking lot and you're not in a car, we're not going to do anything about it unless Albertsons wants us to.
So could this have been written, for example, because I know we used to have like alcohol was not allowed in the park. And so that included a parking lot. But if there's an event there and, you know, the event has been approved to have alcohol, but they're not using the parking lot to park, chili cook-off, for example. You know, are we making it so that then technically that's illegal?
I don't think so at the park because section 495 covers alcohol in the park and specifically states where you can and cannot have alcohol in the park. Because
Okay.
B,
So, and I think, yeah, so that's for the park. What
Right.
about a, you know, at Tap?
I have to stop you guys here. This ordinance specifically is talking about the parks, the alcohol in the parks. It has nothing to do with Albertsons or public rights of way. It's specifically
495.
city, it's the entire ordinance of 355-2021.
492. So yeah, 495 it has to do with just a city park. But
So 495 is a section within this entire ordinance.
we have to remember prior to this, though, we did not have an open container ordinance.
Correct.
So I do think, though, that there are pieces of that whole thing that was there was to create an open container ordinance, but then create places that allowed us to have open containers.
This
So-
goes well beyond parks.
So we can, yes, and it sounds like maybe we can take that one back. Maybe we can get some better clarification on it, if that's okay. Councilwoman
Sounds like
Solomon.
E can go away if you have C.
So I will ask about that and I'll work with Chief on that and we'll get with their legal counsel and our legal counsel. Because the next one is really the same. It's the same verbiage, but it's the first one, 492 is possession, 493 is consumption. And so it's asking to make the same changes. So we'll get the clarification on that.
I think it'd be great to clarify what the intent is here too. I mean, are we trying to create, you know, a possession and consumption law for the whole city? Or are we trying to just enable people to enjoy a drink at the park?
well, I think this came forth because of the issues we're having with the bars in Star and people drinking outside the bars and bringing that alcohol outside the bar, right? And bringing it out on the streets and on the sidewalks and the parking lots.
Yeah, people were getting,
Yeah.
they were
And I think that's why this came about, was to give us teeth to do something about that occurring. And I don't know, I know that other cities have, you know, open container laws and possession laws. I think it brings out, and that's what I got to find out. I think it brings up a good point that if somebody's drinking in the middle of a private parking lot, taking any business here in town, and they're doing that, can I really have the teeth as a public servant to go and do something on that private parking lot? I don't know the answer to that. So that's something I'd have to bring back and find out.
I mean, generally we require permits for distribution and consumption of alcohol outside of, you know, bars and things like that, right?
Right.
And just having all sidewalks open to people, you know, walking around drinking.
Well, this does the opposite. That's what the intent of this does. It does the opposite, allowing not to walk down the sidewalk drinking alcohol. Right. So it's actually taking that away. Because right now, City of Star doesn't have anything that doesn't say that
Right.
I can have a beer and walk down the sidewalk with it.
Well, and so that's why I'm wondering about removing E and moving it to only to parks.
Well, and that's what we did.
That's what we're
So
doing. That's the
remove E,
suggestion.
Move definition of beverage.
I
and parking.
understand that. But by moving that only to E and only to parks,
Oh, I
then
see what
I'm
you're saying.
excluding the rest. Because I think that undoes some of what we were trying to do. you know, when the ordinance was passed.
Okay.
So as you rethink that, think about how do we preserve?
Yep.
that type of
Absolutely.
thing.
495 then specifically talks about the park. We have the current code, and then we have what we've been suggested to change to, which gets a little bit more specific, allows the consumption or the possession in the park, but then gives us some designated safe areas or non-alcohol areas, if you will. So take a quick peek at that.
In your exceptions, do we need to add the splash pad? Can we add the splash pad? Or is that considered playground?
Probably need to be specific. If the intent is to keep the alcohol away from the kids.
Isn't that covered within 200 feet of an 18 or younger event? The
It's
splash
not
pad
an
considered
It's a specific,
It's
not an
it's-
event.
it's a specific
An
item.
event's a
thing.
specific item.
Little butterfly was not meant for people over 18.
So we can add that. Good catch. So we'll add splash pad.
So how
Uh,
far?
It's not a playground. It's different.
Playground.
I mean, instead of splitting hairs with the prosecutor, just lay it out what it is.
Yeah.
So do we want to add the
Splash pad.
tot lot or anything like that?
Tot lot.
What tot lot?
Playground though.
Well, I think the tot lot's a playground.
Okay, so we're going to call that the playground. Okay.
What
All right.
tot lot?
So
The equipment we just put in at Hunter's Creek.
Hunter's Creek.
So that's a playground.
So, okay, I just want to make sure we're all
Yeah.
calling that the same thing.
Is the Keebler House a playground? Because that could be problematic. It's within
No,
200
that-
feet of that.
Well, and it has to be permitted anyway.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So back to the like for the chili cook-off and the playground being right there. And the chili cook-off and
It's
I mean,
permitted.
so if
think the
it's permitted, so
Yeah, so catering permits for something like that need to show how you're going to keep young people from drinking.
so that type of thing is covered at that first sentence where it's otherwise permitted. by
Except as otherwise
statute
permitted. Yeah.
or
correct.
ordinance. That's where it's covered.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Well, I would disagree because a permit is neither a statute nor an ordinance.
It's not, yeah, an actual, we need to clarify
Oh, permitted by
actual
statute.
permit.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, so that we need to add that in there.
Yeah.
Well, but we have, yeah, our ordinance outlines the permit process.
Does it for
But
reserving
no.
works?
That's not how this reads. It's permitted by statute
Or ordinance.
or ordinance.
And our ordinance outlines how it's permitted and how it's allowed. Wouldn't that be the same thing?
It's not the same thing.
Not? Okay.
Not my opinion.
Okay. Okay, I'll get some clarification and some additional on that. We'll work on that. Okay, I just want to do a quick check. Are we doing? Are we okay? Dave, you all right?
No,
Dave needs to go.
I want to go home.
Okay. Well, I do too, really bad, and that's why I'm asking.
So let's,
Okay, all right. So we are at building code and we will end it at building code with the muni code updates.
Happy New Year.
All right.
Well,
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
so here, hey, hear me out. I'm gonna reach out to everybody to find out if there's any date. David's gonna be, he has surgery in December, so he may not be able to attend if we do another meeting, workshop in December. Okay, we'll pick him up. We got a crane. Lift him in here.
I've worked indoors.
But we need to set up I'll reach out to everybody to find out a date that's available. for Everybody possibly in December to do another workshop. Knowing that you may not be able to attend depending on the timing of the workshop. You might be in surgery that day too, so. And then if we need to do another one, we'll do another one in January before we have a public hearing on it, so. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so reach out, I'll look at some dates and throw some dates out to everybody. look at that, okay? So it's 9:35 then, and then we're gonna adjourn our workshop at this time.